Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
Philosopher and the Fool. So, now I can speak from the heart on this subject matter. I probably don't know a huge amount about it. But AI art,
Yeah.
kind of big lately. A lot of people are talking about already apps are doing their disingenuous ads about we've built a stable diffusion, pay us $1 a month, and we'll let you use stable diffusion on your phone and that sort of thing. So once it gets into the app cycle, like the face morph, all that stuff.
Well, that's been happening for years.
Yeah.
Not with AI art, but
Yeah.
if you look at like Topaz Labs, they were doing image upscaling
Yeah.
when you could just compile it yourself.
Yeah, I'm saying once the apps start doing that, that means that it's gotten bigger. It's sort of in the mental psyche. But before AI art, a little bit of history on AI. So, what was the first big AI that really shook the world?
Deep Blue, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, Deep Blue. And chess isn't actually all that big.
If not the what was that device called? The Turkish machine. It was that automatic chess playing machine back in like the 1200s or something.
That thing was kind of AI, wasn't it?
Well, I think there was a guy hidden inside it or something, but
Yeah, it was a scam, but
I'm not clear on the details.
the first really big one was Deep Blue.
Yeah.
And people are a large swath of people are actually terrified of Deep Blue because AI did something better than humans. Completely. A computer was doing something better than
It
humans.
killed my love of chess when I learned about Deep Blue.
Really?
Yeah, I stopped playing chess. Because I was like the head of a chess club. I used to play chess all the time. And I learned about Deep Blue and I stopped playing chess just cold. Didn't play it for like 10 years basically.
Yeah, that could definitely have...
I still don't play chess. Like if a friend says let's play chess, I'll play a game with them.
Yeah.
But I still don't play chess. I used to be the head of a chess club.
Yeah.
And I actually only learned recently, like 2 years ago, that Deep Blue versus Kasparov was not a fair match.
No.
Kasparov was in a really bad environment, and Deep Blue wasn't finished. So Kasparov was like dying on stage basically from heat and stress and whatnot.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the engineers for Deep Blue were taking it apart between matches and trying to fix it to stop it from falling apart.
Yeah.
So neither of them were performing well.
Yeah. There's a minor effect of Go on me when the Go AI beat the best Go player in the world.
Yeah.
I lost a little bit of my...
Oh, the reason I lost interest in chess was I thought chess was solved. But it turns out that the AIs are really good at playing chess.
Yeah.
So once I learned that and same with Go, you can't solve Go.
Yeah.
It's computationally impossible.
So that's actually something to note, though, is the past 2 years have been the biggest 2 years for chess ever in the world. Chess.com got immensely popular. More people than ever are playing chess. Bigger tournaments than ever are in chess. And no one's concerned about Deep Blue. Same with Go. The Go scene's always been smaller than the chess scene. Potentially, I don't know in Asia. It's popular. But still, the Go scene wasn't super shook up by it, even though a Go bot beat the best Go player. And people still play Go and enjoy it. I still enjoy Go. So, after that, AI sort of has always been wondering about doing things sort of in the background. Like helping drivers a little bit. Helping us launch spaceships. That's a huge one because that is so insanely difficult. We basically now need them to help us with that. And it's just been helping in little ways. But one of the ones that's also more at the core of humanity, because there's all these mechanical things, which is like, the AI can do that, that's great. But then we look to the core of humanity, which is playing Go, playing chess. These are games. And so they're more important, they're more real. So music. A lot of people put a lot of work into music AIs. And one of the first ones that really stood out to me was the one that they fed it basically all of Eurovision and had it write a song for them, and then some people performed it. And the song's called Blue Jeans and Bloody Tears. You've heard it.
Yeah.
And the song is absolute trite. It sounds sort of deep and sort of Eurovision, but if you actually pay attention to it, the song is worthless.
Well, so, I mean, you give it bad inputs, it's going to give you bad outputs.
Well, there's that argument there, but I've actually listened to a lot of AI music, and a lot of it's trite. It's technically good, especially the symphonic orchestra, sort of like doing just symphony orchestra classical music. Technically it's good, but none of it gives me that feeling of when you sort of first hear a song that you're going to listen to 100 times later, and you're like, wow, like this song, there's so many layers to it. And maybe those songs will eventually have that, I don't know. But at the moment, they don't have that.
Euler wrote a book on music. the mathematician.
Yeah.
And he said that they were essentially the same thing. And it's this massive book. It was his magnum opus. And very few people have read it because it's very technical, both in math and in music.
Yeah.
And so the overlap of people that can actually understand it is very, very small.
Yeah.
But that would suggest to me, having not read it, that an AI would probably do quite well at music, actually, if you, once you get it working, basically.
Maybe. One of the things with music, though, which is a weird one, I don't know where it stands for a lot of people, but adding the words to music can change it a lot, because you can have the music of the notes and the keys in the right spot, and you can have a piece that sounds nice. However, that one song where he uses cannons in it.
1812 Overture.
Yeah, 1812 Overture. That song isn't, oh, here's a nice tune I'm putting together. That is the overture for 1812. That is a very warlike, victorious song.
Songs even vary from performance to performance.
Yeah.
The 1812 Overture is an example that the London Symphony Orchestra version of the 1812 Overture I don't like very much. But I really like the Minnesota Orchestra version. Yeah. They seem totally different, even though they have the same sheet music. They are using slightly different instruments, different place, different musicians, and you get a very different result.
Yeah.
So each performance can matter as well.
Yeah, even I have these amazing headphones, and there's songs I listen to on these headphones, like, oh, this song's so good. And then I try to play it from my phone without the headphones, and it's like I'm tarnishing how good the song is by playing it with my bad phone speakers. So even the speakers and things come out. Anyways, so music AI hasn't solved yet, to an extent. I don't know if solve's the right term. But image AI does something very interesting. And I don't think actually a lot of people understand what image AIs are doing. Because someone says, I got this AI to do this artwork for me. And sort of actually on the drive over here, I figure out what the AI are doing. They're not doing art. They're searching for art. So basically how the AIs work, from my understanding, is they have been fed basically the internet of image searches to a curated point. And by using Google's own image recognition software, which is I think called Google Dream, or that sort of thing, basically it says flower, and that looks at it, goes flower. And so now it knows what a bunch of different flowers look like. And then flower red. Okay, flower red. That's a red flower. And then you ask the AI for flower red. And it's basically, when it says it's a flower red, it puts together the math for flower red. So it equals a value, flower red. And so when you type in flower red, it will then calculate that and display it after so many iterations of it basically doing calculation. And then you can say to it, yes, flower red, or no flower red in the training. Basically, did I do a good job or a bad job? And then if it says no, then it's like, okay, that's not how I calculate the math for flower red. And so then you just sophisticate this several million times. And it puts these images together from that math. And so it's basically searching all of art that's ever been put online, including its own art that it generates, because it uses that as well. And to make it not huge, it's converting all of art into math, which makes all of art a lot smaller if it's converted to math. Because can you imagine having to have a library of all art? You need something as big as the internet.
It's not storing the art.
Yeah, that's why it's making math.
I'm not sure if math is... I guess you could call it math.
Yeah.
It's... Yeah, like what you said, it's an image recognition program.
Yeah.
So when you type into Google, I want a dandelion, it gives you a bunch of dandelions. And then you say, well, how'd you know that was a dandelion? What's a dandelion look like? And then it tells you, well, this is what a dandelion roughly looks like. That's how I decide if something has a dandelion in it or not.
Yeah.
And you can just see what it's looking at for a dandelion. And it might be looking at stuff we're not aware of. So when we think of a dandelion, we'd say yellow flowers, green stem, that sort of thing. Yeah. But it could notice that there's always blue sky in a photo of a dandelion. So it'll say there has to be a blue pixel in the top right corner for it to be a dandelion.
Yeah.
And so that's the neural network. You can actually, you know about these, you can do targeted attacks on AIs where you just replace little pixels here and there and it completely destroys its imagining of an object. And I don't think, from what I understand, people don't know what the neural networks are doing.
No.
They're a black box. You tell the AI store whatever variables you want.
Yes.
And it stores them and it uses those. And once we get the results we want. We say
I watched
those variables work.
I watched a video of a guy anti-training Stable Diffusion. So he made a training model, and then instead of doing the normal training, like the sort of animation videos that people do, he did it in the opposite direction. I can't exactly remember the technical of it, but he basically was anti-training AI. So the more he iterated, the more it went insane until it was generating static.
So he's getting it, I guess, to show images that, like, okay, show me a picture of a dog.
Yeah.
No, show me a picture that is the least dog-like possible.
Yeah.
You could do something like that.
Yeah, he basically made it do that through a different training method. And so he made the Stable Diffusion Network module, I guess they're called modules. He made the module insane because it was no longer applying logic as we thought, so that's an insane module.
I also don't think they're using the entire internet. Like Stable Diffusion, I think, is using copyright-free images. Yeah. Because from what I understand from Stable Diffusion specifically, there's one artist whose work is predominantly in the training model. So trying to make stuff that looks like his art is a lot easier than doing anything else.
Yeah. No, they definitely they use different images, and they're careful about a lot of them use photographs. So that's why you can actually get a lot of photorealistic if you put the right search in, is you can get things that look like humans or a burger or whatever, because there's a lot of copyright-free just pictures of still lifes. And they have to be careful about that because there are certain legal questions that are already being asked. However, it is a search engine. It's basically like searching for it and generating an image that you searched for. It's not doing art, so to say. It is finding the image, even if the image doesn't exist.
I guess you could look at it that way. I would just look at it as you're asking it, what do you think this looks like?
Yeah, well, there's even that to it. And one of the things why I started talking about Deep Blue and the GoBot, and the music to a certain extent, like the music isn't solved, but people aren't as interested in the music bots anymore because they didn't go anywhere. But there was a lot of talk and buzz around math, like chess. Chess was solved. Like, why do we play chess anymore? Now, part of me thinks that AI art will go the same way, slightly, because we still play against computers, and we force the computers to be worse at chess now, because we can make computers that could easily beat Deep Blue now. So we have to make chess computers stupid, so we stand a chance. But that's just like, oh, I want to play chess, I don't want to play against the humans, so I'll play against the AI.
We make them stupid in the same way we make chess players stupid, though. We just give them a time limit.
Yeah.
So it's fair in a sense, because you don't give a person unlimited time for their turns either, typically.
Yeah. So part of the reason why I don't think this AI art will go quite the way, though, of Deep Blue is chess is still very niche. Even though it's one of the more popular board games, it's still quite niche. Art is not niche. Next to music, which I'm going to categorize music different from art, I think art is one of the most important things that exists for humans.
Are you talking visual art?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, visual art. I basically scale order like importance. It's a very close, like there's the basic necessities of living, and then it's exploration, music art. Although sometimes music art and exploration supersede survival. Because that's how important it can supersede our will, our attempts to live, not our will, but our attempts to live. Like the starving artist is the archetype. He'd rather starve than not do his art. So with the AIs being so good at finding images we ask them to make, it might not go away quite as much as Deep Blue. And it's going to get bigger still before it gets smaller, but I don't think it's the death of art in any way. You've said you don't think it is either. And already our channel, full disclosure, I use Stable Diffusion now as an art assistant for our channel art.
Yeah, so why don't you think it's going to go away?
Why
why don't you think it's going to replace artists?
Because it's fun to draw.
And what about the career of an artist?
So there's one of the things is it's searching for art that already exists. Like its training is based off art that's already existed. And now there's nothing new that's been done. Everything under sun has already been done, is a statement.
What do you mean it's looking for something that's already been done?
It's basing all of its art off already existing art.
Right, but that's what artists do.
Yeah, artists do that as well. So artists can be in slight amount of competition to it, for certain. However, artists have unique styles, and of course you can tell to copy the style as well.
An AI could do its own style.
Yeah, AI can do its own style.
I assume. I'm not sure, but I don't see any reason why it couldn't.
This is coming to the more less logical and more spiritual side of art, and I think you have to be slightly spiritual when you talk about art to a certain extent. That a lot of art, like when you do art, you're drawing a picture, you make a mistake, and then, as Bob Ross says, there's no mistakes, just happy little accidents. So you go through it with that there. A lot of art has a sort of soul to it. Like I don't think AI art will ever be sitting in a gallery worth several $1 million.
There was a piece of AI art that won an art competition. You hear about that?
Yeah, I did.
So what do you say to that?
Well, I think art can definitely win art competitions. There's also ways to recognize AI art.
Right. So why don't you think that AI art will ever be in a museum?
Well, I was saying, so there's the soul to the art. There's a reason someone made the art.
But what is that soul?
It's the emotions and thought and vision an artist put into something.
So you're saying that the artist imbues art with themselves to some
Yes.
extent, whereas the AI can't do that.
Yeah, art is a reflection of the artist, whereas AI art is a reflection of the art.
Could you give an AI a personality?
Well, so that's the thing. That's the interesting thing. So, you give the AI a personality, and to a certain point, when the AI's personality makes it an indistinguishable artist in the thought of soul from artist, then that AI might be alive.
And what is... You see two pictures, one's made by an AI, one's made by a human.
Yeah.
You can't tell which one's which because one just won the art competition. When people are looking at art and they're saying, this really speaks to me, like that's what you do when you win an art competition, right? You're saying something in this speaks to me. So when AI art wins an art competition, wouldn't that suggest that there was a perceived soul in it already?
Potentially.
If you look at
It's a copy of another soul.
The Fighting Temeraire, I think it's called.
Yeah.
My favorite painting. If you look at a picture of it on your computer, that's not the painting.
Yeah.
That is, you could say that's an AI-generated image.
Yes.
It's not really AI, but it's more of just a straight-up computer doing it. I don't know what you'd call that.
Maybe for AI
Algorithmic
to
image.
directly compete, then it needs to get to the point where AI robot, because robots are really bad at dexterity, but when you get to the point where an AI robot can take a acrylic paintbrush and paint one of those images for you.
But what's the difference between looking at a piece of art in a gallery and looking at it on your screen? They can both give you a feeling of, wow, this is amazing. Now, it might be nicer to see it in person.
Yeah.
But there was no soul behind the creation of the picture.
Yeah. Again, why do people keep playing chess against each other, though, if Deep Blue's won it?
Well, Deep Blue hasn't won it. You can still play against Deep Blue.
Yeah.
You can beat Deep Blue. I'm pretty sure that Magnus would beat Deep Blue. I think he's better. Deep Blue wasn't the best chess, and chess isn't solved.
Yeah.
Which means you can always be better than a chess AI. Even Stockfish, you can be better than Stockfish. Even Open and Google AI, you can be better than them.
Yeah.
There is no human that is. And plus, when you join a sport, when you join an art, you aren't joining it to become the best player. That's a terrible mindset.
Yeah.
You don't join the basketball team in elementary school and say, I'm going to be the next Michael Jordan. I'm
Yeah, so-
going to be unhappy.
So the better question is then, I guess, is the competition with artists. So will art...
Because that's what people are concerned about, is the competition.
That's funny. Because one of the weird perspectives that some people have on art is art shouldn't be sold. Because that degrades the art, is putting value to it. And doing art for a living is a degradation of the art.
But then the people who want to be doing art for a living can no longer do it.
Yeah.
And that's what people talk about when they talk about replacement. They're not saying they'll stop doing art. They're saying what happens when people would rather... So you know corporate art style, right? The weird noodly people that are like blue and green and weird colors.
Yeah.
Two-dimensional. That is... The reason they do that is it's very easy for any artist to pick up and keep a consistent style. And it's very cheap to produce, very quick to produce.
Yeah.
And corporations could then shift to using AIs for that. And even these artists that are forced to do this horrible corporate style, they won't get a payment at all anymore. And it'll just be AIs doing it for them. And I was thinking about the idea of that where it might look a bit nicer than the corporate art style. But there's, at that point, how calculated is it? And how much of it has any individual flair?
Yeah.
Like the Soviet Union had musicians working in it who were making songs to the glory of the Soviet Union. And they're including little musical stings and underlying themes in their music to mock the Soviet Union. So there was personality even in that highly restricted space.
I mean, a lot of the time in my art, you can see the mistakes, or I can see my own mistakes. Some people might not see the mistakes. Will the AI artists have mistakes, or will it have errors, artifacts? Because you can train it to clean up artifacts as well.
I don't know if you can say there's...
So when I generate a face with one software, I have a secondary software that comes in and makes the face look more human, look prettier. And another thing that sharpens the whole image and increases how many pixels are in it. And it lets me look between the two of them. And when it does this touch up, sometimes it gets rid of something that was cool in the image.
Yeah, I don't know if there's mistakes in art.
Yeah.
There's, well, it's like you said with Bob Ross, there's happy little accidents.
Yeah.
You were talking about getting an AI to paint with a paintbrush.
Yeah.
And a lot of...
So you can find the journey of the painting.
And you also see things emerge that the artist painting an image is not having a complete image in your mind and putting that on page.
Yeah.
It's a journey. You don't exactly know where you're going to end up when you paint.
There's even a school of belief when it comes to art that you shouldn't, if you're even doing digital art, you shouldn't use Control Z. Because you can completely undo something you did. Like, you should, sure, work on multiple layers, do whatever to make it clean, but never use Control Z. Go back and erase it if you have to.
Yeah, I think even then you can have, if you do 1,000 passes using Control Z to undo 999 of them, you'll still not end up with this perfect image from your head to the page, right? You'll always in the act of creation, that's where God can nudge your hand a little and input a little bit into it. A lot of writing is just having the...
Sorry, you said God influenced your hand. Maybe AI art could be a proof for God.
So the fact that it can create art that resonates with you would be... Why would that be proof for God any more than a normal image?
Oh, no, you're saying God nudged your hand, so maybe God can't nudge the hand of AI art. I have no idea there.
But that would be... You'd be assuming that the AI art is bad to begin with. And I'm not...
It's not bad.
Yet convinced that the AI art is bad.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just a throwaway thought.
If you could convincingly say that the AI art was bad, it was missing soul to some extent, then that would be a good argument for the nature of the soul.
Yeah. So
what you have is a sort of rationalist versus, mystic argument here, where you're saying that, well, there's two mystic arguments, and then there's the one rationalist argument. So the rationalist argument is that the art is just, at its core, art is color pixels arranged in a display, no matter what the medium, whether it's digital or paint or whatever. Yeah. And this can be generated by an AI or by a person all the same. There's nothing special about either. And then there's the one sort of mystic argument where you can say an AI cannot do what a human can do because it doesn't have a soul. And their art will always be missing something. It'll be quiche, it'll be hollow, it'll be empty. But then there's the other mystic argument you can make, which is that you can say the fact that an AI can make art is proof that it has a soul.
Yeah.
And that there is a soul imbued in all things that create. And then you could say there's a soul in everything. There's a soul in the way snowflakes fall. There's a soul in the way the wind blows the sand. There's a soul in the way the waves crash down on the water. And I think a lot of people would agree with that idea that there's a soul in the waves. There's a soul in the snow. There's a soul in the rain. And those are natural processes. And you can say that a computer is the same natural process.
Yeah.
A computer is a very complicated... Well, it's not even. If you think about the mechanism for a wave, you need water on a body with a lot of gravity and tidal forces acting upon it. That's like a computer. That's a very complex system. And it's creating underlying... There's this idea of the universe that everything's vibrating strings, the string theory.
Yeah.
And from these, I think it's 4 to 11 dimensions of vibrating strings arise the natural forces like gravity, and strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force. And that's just from very basic principles. You just have 11 dimensions of vibrating strings, and their intersection, like waves, rise up and you get gravity, rise up and you get heat, rise up and you get electromagnetism. Yeah. It's pretty magical.
Back on the AI art, with that one thing winning the competition, there's also the Voice of Fire, which is apparently a quite valuable piece of art.
You're talking about the one that the Canadian government purchased for $2 million?
Yeah.
The giant blue line?
Yeah, I think that's a piece of rubbish.
I think it could be a money laundering scam. I think
Yeah.
a lot of modern art might be.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen proof, but it would make sense.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ideas that is what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's possible for people to not make art.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, there's also the other interesting thing. Again, one of my earlier points on it's a search thing is it's not making anything new. And I know humans aren't making anything new, but humans have a lot more to look at than
I didn't say people aren't making anything new.
They're both based on observations of what both have seen.
Yeah.
I think humans see differently than the AI, and they have a lot more to be seen, and they can see from the madness of their own dreams.
The AI can see millions of images, maybe more than a human will ever see in their life.
Yeah. But it's seeing everyone's images, whereas a person's seeing their own. I mean, maybe the AI can do a really good job of pretending to see those things if you tell it to do art like Bob Ross.
I don't know if it needs to pretend.
Yeah.
You're making assumptions that the AI isn't... What's the difference between the AI scene and a human scene? You said it's something that is their own. So something that comes to my mind right away.
Well, so I'm uncertain where I stand on this point, but let's say a person goes into the Louvre. I think this is where the Mona Lisa is stored in the Louvre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the Louvre, whatever it's called. And they look at the Mona Lisa, and they realize that it's a counterfeit Mona Lisa. Someone basically perfectly copied the Mona Lisa and has hung it there. And the real Mona Lisa is somewhere else. Is that counterfeit Mona Lisa? Well, most people say it's less valuable as the counterfeit Mona Lisa. But no one could tell until like this one guy, basically the only way he could tell was by carbon dating it or something.
Well, the Mona Lisa was actually stolen at one point and by a counterfeiter, and he replaced it. And eventually he turned himself in, I believe. He told them that he had done it.
Yeah.
And he showed them the real thing. And he can actually tell them apart. He works for the FBI now, I believe, as a counterfeit detector.
Yeah.
He's quite good at noticing the small differences. So you're suggesting that we seem to appreciate Da Vinci when we look at the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, but point there where I'm saying where I'm uncertain where I stand is in that anime with the French thief, the one family kept the counterfeit instead or something because they liked its look better because it felt more personal to their story.
So art's value is based upon attachment?
Well, that's what it seems to suggest to a certain point, because people can really like the counterfeit until they realize it's a counterfeit, then it's a lie.
Have you seen the painting of, I think it's Saturn devouring his sons?
Yes.
And have you seen the Scream, the Mona Lisa, the Blue Boy?
Yeah.
Do you like all of those paintings?
I don't really like the Scream. I actually quite like Mona Lisa. Saturn devouring his son is downright disturbing. It's one of the worst paintings I think in the world in some ways because it is so horrific.
So there's the idea I'm exploring here is some people really love the Scream and you don't like the Scream.
Yeah.
So the value in art
is subjective.
Yeah, and what subjective means is that the value isn't in the piece of art. The value is in the observer.
Yes.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And that doesn't mean that...
I think part of the observation with AI art is being told it's AI.
Yeah, there's no small... It's no small thing to say that something's subjective, because all that means is that the beauty is the same. Whether it's... no, I don't want to go that far with subjectivity. But with beauty being the eye of the beholder, what that is saying is not that there's no inherent beauty in this object. It's that the inherent beauty in that object is within the viewer, not within the object. But it is absolutely beautiful to the observer in a way that makes it beautiful. It's not imaginary. It is absolutely real. It's as real as if it was an objectively beautiful piece.
Yeah.
And or it is objectively beautiful because of the observational beauty. So if use AI generated art, You've made a bunch of AI generated images.
Yes.
A lot of them are terrible.
Yep. And in every single AI image that I have posted, not one of them has not been modified afterwards by me. I've never posted one raw.
But let's say it's not about posting them. It's just about finding a cool image.
Yeah.
And you make 1,000 of them, and you choose out your 10 favorite ones.
Yeah.
In that act,
Of choosing which ones I like.
have you created art?
I think so, partly, yes. Because it's also, I chose which words to look for. I threw them together, and there's a bit of art in searching for AI art.
So going back to the corporate art, I think this is what I was getting at. You remember when I talked about roses have thorns, and that's part of their beauty. If you have art designed by committee, you don't have art. You cannot have art designed by committee. So the fact that you choose out your 10 favorite images of 1,000 and say these are the 10 best ones, you're saying something.
Yeah.
You are taking a risk, because you can't have art without risk. You can't, if you said here's 1,000 images, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, or if you say here's the average of all 10,000 images, you have taken no risk.
Yeah.
You have not made a statement. Art is a statement.
I mean, even why I use the AI art is because it's technically better than me. And I don't mean like technically it's better than me. I mean technically in technical skill, it's making images that I have in my head, but it's actually doing it.
But there's I don't know. You could tie that back to if art is a process and the AI is simply creating what it imagines, there is no process. But if the AI says here's 1,000 iterations and you choose 10, then what you've done is you've created an art process, essentially, where the AI is the mind and you are its hands.
Yeah. Do you consider a photographer an artist?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the photographer is just taking pictures of things a lot of the time. And they're getting the right angle, and they're seeing it in a light that no one else sees it, and they take out that angle. They have to find the picture to take and then take it.
A photographer is showing you what they see.
Yeah.
Because you can see beauty in many things. You can see beauty in the world. And painting, photography especially, is a really cool art form because you can show images in the way you yourself see them. You can, if you're walking along, you've got two philosophers walking along long before the invention of painting, and one of them, they both see a flower off the side of the road, and one of them just sees a flower and keeps walking, and the other one, the light catches it just right, and they're struck by the beauty of that. You take a picture of that and you can say, this is what I see.
Yeah.
Even though you're standing right there, you might not see the same thing, but with a picture you can say, this is what I see.
Yeah.
And pictures, cameras, their colors aren't right for human eyes a lot of the time, and lighting's not right, so you have to do a lot of touching up, or you have to get really nice light into the right angle.
Yeah.
With painting, it's much easier. You can get exactly what you saw. You can get what you saw so well that you can get rid of all the... You don't even need to include all the details because...
You can make it more real than reality.
Yeah, because those little details don't matter.
Yeah.
What matters is what's shown. So when you make it... I found these when I was 20 or 21. I found these really cool paintings. I thought they were really cool. And I showed them to my friend's mom. She's a big art person. And they were hyper realistic. They were incredible.
Yeah.
And I thought, look at this amazing art. And she's like, it's all quiche. I think that's the word she used, which I didn't know what that word meant, but it means it's sort of, it appeals to the lowest common denominator. It's meant to look impressive, but there's nothing impressive about it. I thought, what? No, this is beautiful. This is super realistic. But if you're doing that, you're not really saying anything, are you? You're just copying what's there.
Yeah.
So,
if you have anything.
Yeah, if you make an AI that... There's one of the AIs is called DALL-E, right?
Yeah.
And it would be interesting... Stable diffusion is a tool. It's not AI generated art, really.
No.
it's an AI paintbrush because you can adjust the sliders and the variables.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's actually AI, like DALL-E maybe. If there's
Midjourney does think, if you don't give it any prompting, it has its style. That it will always do that style.
if there's like an AI artist would be an AI that says, "Here's a rose," and you say, "Oh, I'm gonna just nope, you can't touch any sliders. This is a rose.
Yeah.
This is the one picture. There's no other variant. This is what a rose is. I can draw another rose picture, but that will be rose 2. This is rose 1."
Yeah.
But on the side of alleviating fears of replacement,
Yeah, that's what I was about to talk about. Maybe it will. I mean, one of the big ones is not safe for work artists, actually. Because a lot of the commission comes from, oh, I want this specific character naked. Whereas you can now search for that.
I think, though, the more arcane your request, the harder it will be for an AI to deliver.
Yeah.
If you ask for, like, a tree that the AI doesn't see that often,
Yeah.
like dragon tree, I think are fairly rare to see pictures of, as far as I'm aware. You ask for, like, a dragon tree with a, I don't know, some animal that you hardly ever see, like a pika in it.
Yeah, I have another example for you. You ask the tree for, the AI, for Lord Glove.
Yeah, for my book.
Now, you could argue that, okay, let's describe Lord Glove. So he's blonde, he's gray eyes.
He's got short hair.
Yeah, short hair. He's
got green eyes.
Oh, green eyes. Okay, he's yay tall.
I've got gray eyes.
He's yay tall. He's got a sort of sad look to his face. He should be standing up straight, but his shoulders are slightly stooped because he can't quite spiritually manage it. So he's just giving the appearance of standing up straight.
And that's your image.
Yeah, he's a bit of a broken spirit. That's what I'm trying to describe there.
Yeah.
He's lithe, so lithe guy, because he's not ridiculously muscular, but he's fit.
So you could input a lot to approximate him.
Yeah. Or you could just try to draw him.
But if you want something that doesn't often come within the... I'm trying to think of things that don't... The AI is limited,
yes.
Obviously. But so is an artist.
Yeah.
If I tell an artist, draw me a picture of Jupiter, and they don't know what Jupiter looks like, they're going to be as limited as an AI that doesn't...
And on the side of art being subjective, there's some artists I just really like their style.
Like if you can't get it to draw you the blueprints for Area 51.
No.
They can give you blueprints for Area 51. It'll say they are, but they're not.
Yeah, but I could say generate who's his name? John Howe.
Yeah.
I actually use John Howe as a basis quite a bit because he's got a very good fantasy art style. So I could say draw a picture like John Howe. Its images actually look nothing like John Howe's arts, for one thing, Stable Diffusion. But I'd much rather have his picture of Gandalf than I'll pick out from one of the pictures of...
Oh yeah, so that's one thing that the AI isn't doing yet. And I think it will probably do this in the future. If you want John Howe art, you have to give it reference material of John Howe.
Yeah.
But if you want it to do a style that you don't have, you want it to do your own style, and you don't feed it anything, it can't do that.
Yeah.
So if there's an artist with a very unique style...
Let's see, do my Potato Man.
Yeah. But if there's an a commission artist, right, like you're saying. Let's say there's this not safe for work artist. They have a very unique style.
Yeah.
And people buy it for the style, buy their work for the style.
Yeah.
The AI isn't going to replace them.
I was just thinking commission artists start throwing aggressive artwork. AI aggressive, like I said, putting the little dot in the corner. You actually...
Or you start copyrighting styles.
Yeah.
And it becomes a future of copyrighting styles. I think AI could very well replace most artists. There will still be skilled people that people will like a lot, but they won't be a kid, like a 16-year-old making a living off of or making some money on the side off their art anymore. You'll have to have established quite a name for yourself before you're making a living as an artist. Yeah. I think a lot of corporate art is going to be taken over by AIs.
Well, so the way of the horses used to be everywhere. There used to be stables, used to be horse hitching. Huge business was based off horses.
Yeah, well, a lot of jobs have disappeared in time. Like textile industry, millers. There's been a huge amount of jobs that have disappeared due to automation.
Yeah.
And the thing that happens is new jobs continue to emerge.
Yes, but also actual textiles. So they're really expensive. Like getting textiles done that's not by a mill,
Yeah.
very expensive. Horses, like having a barn with horses are incredibly expensive now.
That's because they're not ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Why do you bring that up?
Well, we have the businesses for horses and the businesses for textiles, and those things that aren't automated still exist, even though that job on a massive scale has gone away, like you said. And
Yeah, but
have to make a name for themselves. So I'm pointing out historically there's precedent for what you said about there'll be artists, but they have to make a name for themselves, and what they're doing has to actually...
90% of the artists are going to lose their jobs.
Yes, that's a potential. Still, I wonder... one of the counters to it is the imperium of man's hatred for AI.
There will be people that will not buy AI art, or they will say, like you, there's no soul in it.
Well, I don't know if there's a soul or not. I think certainly that it's copying the soul and mashing of other people. I don't know if it's its own soul yet. And when it is its own soul, then it's its own soul. But currently it's just a reflection. But I'm fine with it having its own soul. I'm fine with humanity creating sentient AI. I mean, if it kills us, that's not so good. But the concept of creating something that's not human but still life, I think is acceptable and possible. I mean, to a certain extent, so there's a big ethical thing right now. I don't know if it was in China or not, but a sheep was made in an artificial womb. And so it still had to have two base sheep, I think, to make it. Though, like, it still used the genetics of two base sheep. But you could probably use one sheep to make the sheep in the artificial womb. And it's going to be a long time, or very illegal anyways, until a human is made like that. And then we'll see if that human is alive or not.
What do you mean?
In Artemis Fowl, whenever they create clones, the clones aren't alive. Like, they're all vegetables.
But Dolly was a clone, and she was alive.
Yeah.
You can in the States, you can pay to clone your pets. It's like $25,000, and you can clone your cat or your dog or whatever. So you can always have the same pet.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, these things that like 10, 20 years ago were considered unethical or theoretical, that they're doing them now. I learned about that a few months ago, and it kind of blew my mind. But
so we have these artificial wombs that did work completely growing as sheep. So we actually have the full potential just to make a person without people.
Well, you'd still need to clone someone.
Yeah, but I mean, you just need one person right now to make a person.
I guess, yeah, like a female, yeah.
Can't you, from males, create the cell?
I don't think so. I think that's something that was being worked on. I don't know if you can or not. But like, you need an egg to just house.
Because I do know you can like make the sperm gamete. Like you can get the requirements from. I thought you could get the requirements from either single person, but maybe you need to.
Well, I'm saying if you wanted one person,
yeah,
you would need an egg cell from the person you were cloning.
Yeah.
In order to house their DNA.
So when we get to the point where we can grab...
Or you can just make blank eggs, potentially. If you can make blank eggs, then yeah, you would only need the one person, I assume. Yeah, we've been able to clone people since we made Dali. Since we cloned Dali, right?
Yeah.
Dolly?
Dolly,
yeah. Since we cloned Dolly, we've been able to do that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all ethics.
Yeah. But isn't Dolly like genetically messed up though, because it's basically...
Oh, she died. She was the same age as her mother, basically.
Yeah.
So she just died of old age quite young.
Yeah.
But with this pet thing, I don't know how that works, because obviously the idea is that the pet lives longer than your current pet. Mm-hmm. So either they have a workaround for that, or you take a sample when they're young and then you keep it on ice until you're ready to get a fresh one. And you could do that with humans as well. You could take like their cells when they're a baby, and then your kid dies in a school shooting, and you have a spare one ready to go. There's your cyberpunk dystopia in American City.
Yeah.
Like,
well, then
kid comes home with like a number 3 on their forehead, and you're like, "What? I sent number 2 out. Dang it! Another school shooting."
Well, then we start stable diffusing our kids' genetics for when they clone them, like they have the original, and then
That's the 4th one this week. I'm taking you to a cheaper school.
We start doing the stable diffusion on them.
We get the kids we want.
Yeah.
Well, they do.
That's also a thing that's happening.
In Iceland. They
CRISPR.
No, they abort Down syndrome babies in Iceland,
Well, there's actually now, it's not guaranteed.
Because eugenics was bad when the Nazis did it, but not when Icelandic people do it, I guess.
There's it's not guaranteed, but there's still ways to in a pregnancy influence if it's going to be a boy or a girl. Because one of the things that people do is they abort if it's a boy or if it's a girl. But also there is a way I know where you can increase basically the chances of it being one or the other before they're born.
Wow. And there's
and it's not just like, oh, eat this food, do whatever. No, it's like going in, giving some injections. And
well, that would be the same idea as eating a food or something.
Yeah.
There was a study done on, I read about this when I was like 12, so I don't know if the results are the same anymore. But they found that when they looked at all the variables, the parent who was most relaxed during sex was most likely to be the sex of the child. And I don't know if that was the biggest variable, but they found that was a significant variable.
I thought one of the significant variables was just temperature.
Could be. I mean,
I remember hearing that at one point.
That could be related to your stress or relax levels as well. But yeah, like you were saying, CRISPR, we have a lot of gene editing technology that's just been starting to roll out now.
There's a different thing than the eugenics, which I found out about. Well, it's sort of eugenics, but it's instead of terminating if they have Down syndrome. This is for the main one was sickle cell
anemia.
Yeah, sickle cell anemia. Basically, there's kids who parents had sickle cell anemia, except one of them didn't, and the kid actually has 3 parents. And basically, so pregnancy in the normal way, and then they splice in the genetics of a third parent who doesn't have the sickle cell anemia into this point where the sickle cell anemia exists genetically, and then those kids are born without it. And so there is a sort of third parent involved in there.
It seems risky. Stuff bothers me a little bit because it always goes wrong. We're
going to get that Doctor Who episode where the guy accelerated the human evolution to a different path, and he turned into a life-draining monster because he went down a different route of human evolution, the sci-fi, whatchamacallit.
There's always unforeseen circumstances. Yeah. Like, you look at thalidomide was the big one, obviously, but there's lobotomies was another big one. You look at... So apparently, when... I just learned about this recently, but when endocrines were first discovered, like hormone receptors, they thought, wow, this is great. So we'll give short boys tons of testosterone, and we'll give tall girls tons of estrogen. And that really messed up with those kids.
That went really bad, didn't it?
And now we think, oh, we can just cure gender dysphoria with a bunch of hormones to the kids now. We're not like those crazy people in the past that were just pumping their kids full of hormones. We're pumping them full of hormones for a good reason. So we have that. You have cesarean sections. So you cut open a woman when she's giving birth.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to save lives. But it turns out that you lack a bunch of immunities when you do that.
Really?
Yeah. And so we know that now. So that's accounted for. You can give...
Sorry, I just had a really dumb idea of how to deal with the C-section afterwards. It was just you shove them back in.
No, the C-section is to give birth.
Yeah, but you do the C-section because there's difficulty coming out one way, so you just make sure it's slightly the same process by shoving them back in a controlled manner.
Well, they kind of do that, but they get a bacteria sample of the birth canal, and they give that to the kid, I believe is how it works.
Yeah.
And then the kid gets the immunities.
Yeah.
But...
That's a lot more wholesome than my thought.
There could be other...
Unforeseen things still.
But of course, cesarean sections do save a lot of lives.
Yes.
So they are something that we probably shouldn't stop doing.
Yeah.
But there's still a cost. There's a cost to everything.
Yes.
There's that... It's been going around like wildfire recently, that Thomas Sowell's... there's no... What does he say? There's no benefits, only trade-offs or something like that? Like... You can say, oh, well, this would just fix everything. No, there's a trade-off. There's always a trade-off.
Well, in Full Metal Alchemist, you've watched a bit of that, right?
I watched like half an episode of Brotherhood.
Yeah. Did they talk about why the two characters are so messed up?
I know why. I don't know
Yeah.
if it talks about it.
Yeah, it's because
But their mother died, and then the brother died and lost his arm and
well, they didn't die, so
trapped his soul in a suit of armor. That whole
yeah.
thing.
So what happened is, so they went ahead and gathered all the elements that are in a human.
Yeah.
Because they're both young alchemists.
Sponge.
Sponge.
Yeah. Sulfur, phosphorus, oxygen, carbon,
Iron.
and hydrogen.
There's iron.
But the top 5, I think, are...
Yeah. Anyways, they
Sponge.
gathered all the elements. They put it into an alchemy circle, and they tried to bring her back. And then, while they were doing that, it's basically there's more to it than just that exchange, because there's also her life. And so he lost his arm. His brother lost his body. He lost his arm and a leg. And then what they got back still wasn't their mother. And they ended up killing the thing they got back. And then he trapped his brother's soul in a suit of armor. But there's the equivalent exchange.
Well, that's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
You're playing with forces beyond your understanding, and
Yes.
you're not going to get the same thing God got.
Yeah.
Weave. There's a super famous work of art.
I think you will find that Philosopher Alchemist is more popular.
Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus.
I think you'll find that Frankenstein is less popular than Philosopher Alchemist.
I doubt it.
Pushes up glasses.
Everyone knows Frankenstein.
Yes.
Everyone knows Frankenstein. People might not know the exact details of Frankenstein, but they've got the
But in
important
Frankenstein,
details.
he was trying to create life. He wasn't trying to bring anyone back to life.
Yeah, but it's the same idea. You're playing with forces of nature that you have no right in playing with.
Yes.
You have no idea what the outcome is. Another great example, I think, is the French bullfrog, which they introduced to the States. And it became a nightmare there.
The cane frog as well
Yeah.
in Australia.
So I was watching a climate change debate on Lex Friedman's podcast.
Yeah.
And one of the guys was talking about how we now have the ability to genetically engineer mosquito species into extinction.
Yeah.
And he said we could do that in Africa to get rid of one that carries
Like 5 different deaths.
some kind of fever,
Oh, yeah.
Dengue fever, something like that.
Yeah.
We could genetically engineer that species to go into extinction, basically.
Yeah.
And he said we should go all for it. And I thought that was a terrible idea because we don't know what the price of all those mosquitoes dying out would be. And when you do something top down like that, that's irreversible, you get massive consequences.
Well, humans have completely eliminated several species.
It's different.
On purpose.
Yes, but this would be on purpose as well. But the difference is there's ground up versus top down.
Yeah.
If you send out teams of 10 million people to swat every one of these mosquitoes they see,
Yeah.
that is better than genetically engineering things. Because at any point you can say, well, stop swatting them. This isn't working. All the snakes started dying. We don't know why the snakes are dying, but all the snakes started dying.
Yeah.
But if you do it top down, you're like, okay, all the snakes started dying, and it's too late. The virus is out there. We can't stop it.
Yeah.
You don't do top down. You got to do bottom up.
Yeah, well, there's even that thing, so there's this idea of it's a ocean-born, I think it's either a bacteria or algae that's been proposed, and it's been made.
That can convert carbon into oil.
No, it's not that one. It eats plastic really, really well, ridiculously well. And it was decided not to be deployed because in a test it destroyed a dinghy.
Just makes sea travel impossible.
Yeah, it would make it so you couldn't have plastic in the ocean.
Well, I heard about there's an algae that pulls carbon from the air and turns it into oil. And a guy was saying we could have basically a renewable source of oil if we use this.
Yeah.
And that sounds great, but my concern would be...
Well, if the algae catches fire.
no, it would actually be... what if it blocks out all light for the rest of the ocean? Like, algae blooms already killed tons of life.
And red tide.
Yeah, well, that poisons everything.
Yeah.
So if these are poisonous, that's bad as well.
Yeah.
But even if they're not poisonous, algae blooms still... Because what they do is they suck in oxygen, right?
Yeah.
So fish will asphyxiate. They'll be swimming, and there's suddenly no air, and they die. And there's nothing they can do. Like, imagine if all the air just disappeared because of a plant in your room. It's terrifying. There's nothing you can do. And so fish just die from algae blooms.
We basically need, like, giant artificial lakes on Earth, and we're already enough water.
And there's no way to see. Like, when is this? We have problems in Canada where Norwegians came over to Canada, and they wanted to start a fishing industry. So they...
It's just thinking we're talking about invasive species and problems, and they're saying Norwegians came over to Canada.
They're
and we
everywhere
can't
now.
get rid of them.
They keep skiing on everything. It's meant to be cold and miserable here, and they're having fun. They need to go home. But no, they brought a bunch of Atlantic char, I think it was, or Atlantic cod, something like that, to the Pacific.
Yeah.
And they took over everything. And they, their density or their specific genetics carries this parasite that killed all the native fish, basically. And
Well,
that was a nightmare to the fishing
We even
industry.
have a problem, which luckily it's not as bad as it could be with bison where we are, where they reintroduced the wood bison, which had been gone for ages. And for the first 30 years of them being around, the wolves basically looked at them and go, I'm not messing with that. And the bears looked at us, I'm not messing with that. And humans even have a, should I mess with that? And then the bison basically, okay, well, nothing's challenging us. Population explosion. Oh, we need more space. So they started hiking up the mountainsides.
And driving the sheep.
Yeah, and eating the sheep's food. And so we used to have, because we wanted their population to be reestablished, we had, okay, you can only shoot bulls because then they can keep populating. There's a limit, and there's only going to be so many tickets per year. And now it's changed to, get yourself a ticket, and you can shoot...
Hop on board the train and just start shooting them from the
Well, it's
the
not
windows.
quite that point, but one person, it used to be one family can have a ticket, whereas now it's every person in the family can have a hunting ticket for them, and you can shoot the calves as well. Not the calves, the sows. You can shoot the sows.
Even when trying to restore to a previous state, there's unforeseen consequences. What if we brought back the passenger pigeon and they just start killing, blocking out the skies and all the trees die? Because there's no light anymore.
Yeah.
And then...
Or we bring back the dodos, and it turns out there's a reason we made them extinct in the first place.
Yeah, they finally can finish their plan.
Yeah.
They're, I think the way to... You've talked about before this idea of seeding clouds to make them shiny or something, right?
Yeah, it seems like a bad idea.
You're not solving the pollution problem. There's still particles in the air.
Yes.
And you are getting rid of sunlight, so you might cause a nuclear winter.
Yeah, well, no, the thought is called a nuclear winter on purpose.
And that seems like... So this is something that's...
That seems like a bad idea.
The climate is unbelievably complicated.
Yes.
In this climate change debate, I don't know if this is true, but it makes sense, and these guys didn't seem to be... They didn't seem to have reasons to lie. They had reasons to look at their beliefs favorably, but in this specific case, neither of them disagreed with each other, and it made sense. Smog reduces hurricanes, apparently, because the particulate prevents hurricanes from forming.
Oh.
The biggest dampener of hurricanes on Earth is the Sahara Desert, because it is releasing some of the most particles of anything on Earth. And it's killing hurricanes constantly.
Yeah. And you can see it everywhere in the sunset.
And that means that there is a restorative balance that keeps happening, essentially. And if you think you can just shove your foot in there and say, I know what's best, you're crazy.
Well, that's... So a great way to do global cooling, so we can look at, okay, so there's this amount of greenhouse gases that have been released. So those are global warmers.
Yeah.
And we know how much is in the atmosphere. And so it's this percentage here is leading to 1%, this is leading to 2%, this is leading to 3%.
Just fill it with CFCs.
Yeah, so we release an equivalent amount of CFCs to balance it out, and then we all die of radiation poisoning.
Yeah, because then the ozone's gone.
Yes.
And that's much worse.
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of the things scientists noted. He's a nuclear scientist, is Thunderfoot, which is he was showing something kind of interesting, and he's the guy who also had the idea of sending shinies in the atmosphere that aren't CFCs. But he's saying, so currently we have the equivalent for 2% global warmers in the atmosphere. However, we're actually only going up at 1% because we have 1% global coolers in the atmosphere. And this is just what we produce. That's not naturally there. And so he's saying if we produce another 1% of global coolers, then we can try and balance it that way.
Yeah, and I don't think we should at all. I absolutely don't think we should be messing with that sort of thing. That's where rationalism leads you. And that's a dark path. It's bad.
What about making things that just eat the CO2 we've released? Well, that's the algae and that gets spread everywhere, so that's also kind of bad.
If you're planting trees, I think there's not much you're... Look.
We genetically modify a tree, right?
No.
And it sucks in way more CO2 than it should, and then all air on Earth.
If you're planting native trees in their native forests,
yes,
I think you're probably going to be okay. But if you're planting marigolds grow really fast. So let's just chuck them all over Brazil or something. Like then you're going to cause problems
Yes.
because they're going to kill everything else. And I think marigolds are nitrogen fixers, which is quite good for the soil, but I'm sure that could cause problems elsewhere. Like, hey, we wanted that nitrogen here, not there. And no, I really don't think top down is a good idea at all.
These things sometimes happen accidentally, though. It's not even humans accidentally. It's just like a bird eats a seed and poops out and then destroys the whole environment.
Well, I don't think it destroys the environment because everything's changing constantly.
Yeah.
I think, like, let's say you want to reintroduce wolves to England.
Yeah.
I think the way you do that is not fly over a pack of wolves and drop them in England. I think what you do is you ban the hunting of all wolves in England, and then you wait.
Have wolves show up again.
And if wolves show up, they show up. And if they don't, they don't. But if they raft over on like one of those pumice rafts or a coconut raft or something, then they do so. And if they don't, they don't.
It is time, brothers, for us to return to England. They made it illegal to hunt us, and we shall show them fear once more. Their sheep shall be ours.
Get on the coconut raft. It happens in Vancouver. You have deer and cougars and whatnot swim across.
Yeah, and coyotes.
So it is possible.
Yeah.
Wolf, I don't know how good of swimmers wolves are, but it's not like it's 40 miles. It's far, but it's doable by humans, and wolves tend to be better at endurance. So
The English Channel is barely doable by humans.
yeah, but wolves are it's doable by top fitness humans, and wolves are like top fitness humans. I don't know if they can swim or not,
Yeah, but there's also no wolves in France.
but they could get to France.
So first they have to go through Germany, which they're starting to do again.
Yeah, and you just leave them alone, and you see what happens.
The German farmers have left them alone because they are ordered to. And you know what the German farmers have started doing? Breaking the law. Because their cows keep dying.
Yeah, but you as long as you're not releasing a virus to kill all the wolves,
Yeah.
I say shoot the wolves that go after your sheep, sure. But the best way to reintroduce wolves, I don't think, is to pick up a bunch of wolves and chuck them down. Especially because, like up here, we got the wrong species of bison, right? Like we took the plains bison instead
No,
of
we have
forest.
wood bison.
But they bred them, right? Like they bred them for that, I think.
No, we have wood bison.
But didn't they breed them with like they got?
No, okay, so the story's kind of cool. Mr. Arms taught it before. But so, know the sandhill crane?
Yeah, no, I know that they were following those.
Yeah, and they came. So what happened is they had the last wood bison were in an area with plains bison, and they were interbreeding, and so the woods bison were no longer pure woods bison, and they were getting the diseases of the plains bison. But when they found the nesting spot of the sandhill cranes, the wood bison they encountered were in a terrain that the plains bison couldn't get to, and so they were pure wood bisons in this park that weren't plains bison.
Pure bloods.
Basically, yeah, they weren't genetically interbred with the plains bisons, and they didn't have that disease, and that disease is one of the main things they didn't want them having. And so they took the disease-free wood bisons and they seeded them to several different locations, including the Yukon.
Yeah.
So those were as close to the wood bisons that were in the Yukon that they could get. And they're basically the same.
I don't think we should roll over and like let the army ants win, let's say. But I don't think we should try to introduce like a species of different ants to fight them or something.
The uber ants.
Yeah.
And then the uber ants start taking cars over because they can eat metal.
Yeah, I don't think you shouldn't play God. That's
But
pretty.
it's so fun.
That's kind of one of the biggest stories in literature, right? Like that's the Golem. That's Phaeton driving the chariot of the sun.
It's Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein. That's more popular than all of those. That's Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
And the boys trying to resurrect their mother. That's the quest for immortality in a huge amount of fiction. And I think the reason immortality is reviled, I found it weird that it's reviled because it's like, hey, who wouldn't want to live forever? And I think that's the point, is that living isn't meant to be everything.
Yes.
I think that's why immortality is reviled, because, hey, it's like if you, like, why shouldn't I focus on making tons and tons of money at the cost of everything else? Because money isn't the point.
Well, I think lately in the media of immortality, people still see it as wrong, but they're seeing it wrong for the wrong reasons. Because in the Lucifer TV series, they encounter...
It's hard to be against immortality from a rationalist perspective.
Yeah. Well, they encounter Cain. and Cain's lived forever since he murdered his brother. That's one of the...
That was one of his curses. Yeah.
Yes. And in this version, Cain's not old man, because part of Cain's curse is actually he's keeps aging. But so he's immortal. And one of the reasons Cain wants to die is he's done it all. And he's like, there's nothing interesting left to do.
Right.
And
I don't think you would run out of interesting stuff.
Also, Cain is incredibly lonely because whenever he's made friends, he always outlives them. And so he's being driven insane by there's no other immortals. And so any connection he makes is a misery.
I've always thought those were really bad reasons.
Well, so it's interesting because...
Like, people own dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs live about a fifth as long as humans.
So...
Or a tenth as long.
In the book series I recently read, there's...
A seventh even.
Fairies are a big part of it. The Fae. The Siddhi. And they live forever.
The She. Yeah.
They're called the Siddhi in this book. So they live forever.
Is it an audiobook?
Yes.
Probably pronouncing it wrong.
No, because they're the Garden-born, there's the Siddhi, and there's the Norns. So that's how they pronounce. He has like alternative names for everything.
Okay.
Like they don't have Christ, they have Osiris. And Osiris died on the tree hanging upside down. So he didn't die on the cross. So it's basically parallels.
Oh, that's the Hangman. That's a tarot card.
Is it?
Yeah. It's the sign of the inverted king.
Ah.
Because his one foot's bent to create the sign of sulfur.
Yeah. So the Siddhi live forever, and the Siddhi's problem is they've become obsessed with death, even though they're immortals. And so they're basically just waiting around to die, but they're immortals. And so it's like a nihilist sickness has spread throughout them of just... It's not boredom, like they still find life interesting, it's just they're waiting to die because a lot of bad things have happened to them. But when the character is talking, it's like, what would an immortal know about a friend's death? And one of the Siddhi replies, I've had family who's died from tragedy, and it hurts just as much as when one of my mortal friends dies. But it does not mean that it is any lesser or any greater. It's just the amount of time I had to spend with them, and that's all. And the Siddhi are actually like, they're always like, you're immortals, you don't understand anything. They're immortals. They understand so much because they've had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, you can still have friends and family and loved ones even if they die. Yeah. And you can... I don't think you'd ever get bored. There's always something to do, always something to learn.
Yeah, no, the evil of immortality is the not going to heaven in some ways.
Like you could play RimWorld for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, but like the evil of immortality is not going to heaven.
Yeah, that's what it is, yes. Or being...
Because why be on Earth forever when you could be in heaven?
It's sort of one of those, like the Gnostics and the Hindus, they have this idea of the traps of the devil, basically, which is pleasures of the flesh. And that doesn't just mean like sexual, that's like food and warmth and lust. And it depends on, like the Gnostics believed anything nice was bad, basically.
Gambling.
Whereas the Hindus, they were a bit more like... It's carnal pleasures like food and sex.
And it's also the overindulgence of such pleasures.
But the Gnostics were like, if you like it, then it's a trap.
So no Christmas.
They were very miserable people.
Yeah.
They're not around anymore. They're all in heaven now. They left us behind.
So they can have fun in heaven.
Yeah, well, it is a bit...
That's also the wrong perspective of nothing good on Earth because...
it's really... So the Egyptians have this amazing mythology. I think it's kind of the best.
Well, does it live on Earth well and then live in the afterlife well?
So when you go to the afterlife, you're in front of this panel of 40 judges or 42 judges. I can't remember how many. And they each ask you a question. And if you fail these questions, your soul is destroyed by the Soul Eater.
Yeah.
Amit, the Soul Eater. And they basically say, was your life lived well? That's their question. So boil down to is, was your life worth, like, is your soul one that's going to be worthy of coming into heaven, basically? Did you actually do something with your life?
Yeah.
Did you live righteously? Did you live well? Did you not lie? If you learn all 42 questions, it's actually, it's basically the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
But it's like, did you not lie? Did you, and I believe, now this could be a modern interpretation, kind of like how Christianity is all touchy-feely, but I believe they were like, look, if you messed up a few times, that's life. The question is, did you try to be a good man? Did you make amends when you did wrong? Did you?
Well, it's the Percy Jackson Olympians really misconstrued the afterlife of Hades in the fields.
Right.
Because when Perseus was walking through there are all these like blank souls just standing around kind of listlessly for eternity.
But isn't that how it is? Like, isn't the point to go to Elysium?
Well, you want to get to Elysium. But in the game Hades, when you encounter the woman singing that song, No Burden.
Yeah, Eurydice.
Yeah, Eurydice. She's not in Elysium.
Mm.
She's in the Pelham Fields with everyone else. She's there with all the other souls. And it's that your burdens are gone. You don't have the attachment to life. You're not just listlessly in a field. It's just the life before doesn't matter because you're dead.
So there's a...
So you're not listless. Like, if you read the literature on the afterlife, like, no, Elysium is really nice. The fields are... You just are there without any of the burdens of life.
I think if you
make of it what you will.
Take them metaphorically, it can work a bit better as well.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure if the Greeks did or not. But if you make it... Because if you know what heaven looks like you can say Elysium is good, and Pelennor, what was it called?
Oh, well, I'm saying the Pelennor, that's wrong. Yeah. It's the fields, though.
But it does start with a P, I think. But anyways, the fields, Elysium, the Isle of the Blessed, you can say one's good, gooder, goodest.
Then there's Tartarus.
But an actual description of the events within, I think, is less useful, because the point is more from a metaphorical sense. Maybe the Greeks didn't actually think this way, but from a metaphorical sense, there's a story of Dionysus, Zeus's son, who was eaten by the giants or the Titans. I think he was torn apart by the Titans and eaten. So Zeus killed them with his thunderbolts.
Yeah.
And he created earth from their bodies. And it was a place of evil because it was made from the flesh of Titans, or flesh of giants, whatever it was. But because they had eaten a god, they didn't Dionysus, humans sprung up. And humans are beings of the earth, but they are the soul of a god clad in earthly flesh.
Yeah.
And like we said on a previous podcast, the reason you put seeds in the soil is so they grow. So you could say that a seed that doesn't try to grow or that doesn't grow isn't a very good plant. But a seed that grows well is a great seed. And when that returns to the fold, when Dionysus is reformed, he is composed of every soul, every human that ever existed, and they can finally rejoin and recreate Zeus's son. And he will be greater than he ever was.
Yeah. In the Hades, Lucifer series, Lucifer leaves hell because he is fed up with being in hell, because he's the only angel there. And throughout the whole thing, it's basically exploring who is Lucifer, what's going on, why does he exist, all the angels. And they actually, for a show made in the modern times with people's perspective of Christianity, it actually gives Christianity and like the gods within it a pretty good knock for what they're worth. And like, yes, God loves people and he is caring. But one of the interesting things is, so throughout the series, there's this one criminal who's kind of this horrible person. Like, he's not the worst, but he hasn't done great with his life. And he has this ups and downs, and eventually he dies. And Lucifer returns to hell, and he encounters this guy, and they talk with each other. And each person has their own personal hell they're in. So you open up a door, and you go into a person's personal hell. And this is one of the few people that Lucifer finds he can talk with, is this sort of, like, all-right guy. And one of the times he goes back to hell, and he opens up the guy's door to his own personal hell. And the guy's gone. And it's like, what? Where'd he go? No one's ever left hell before. Did he escape? Is this a lost soul? So he searches around for this guy and can't find him. And so he asks the angel, who's in God's grace still, like, where is this guy? Because in God's grace, they're more powerful. And the angel says, he's in heaven. And this sort of freaks out Lucifer.
The door was never locked.
Yes, the door is never locked. So in the series, what puts people in hell is their own guilt.
Yeah.
And once they get past their own guilt, they can leave. And so when Lucifer figures this out, he's like, what have I been doing in hell this whole time, making sure they don't get out? And so it switches to Lucifer goes back to hell, and he's going in between each and every single individual soul and helping them work through their guilt.
I haven't read Dante's Inferno, but I think it's said in it that Lucifer can leave hell whenever he wants.
Yes, he can.
But he would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven.
Yeah. And that's part of the journey of the Lucifer TV show, is Lucifer realizing sort of his own thing. Like there's this whole thing, Lucifer, you can't return to heaven, it will destroy you. And every time he's tried before, it's destroyed him. And then he returns to heaven and it doesn't destroy him. And it's because
He has to change.
Yeah, angels' power is based on self-actualization. And so there's this huge thing where they're uncertain of so all the angels on earth are invincible. So you like shoot Lucifer with a bullet and it's going to do nothing. However, whenever he's next to the female lead, who's immortal, he can get shot and he can get hurt and it can kill him. And he's vulnerable when he's near. It's like, what's going on? Why is he vulnerable? And it's because he loves her. And so he's vulnerable when he's with her. And it's because angels are self-actualizing. He becomes mortal when he's near her.
Less clear on that one, but
Yeah.
it's probably good there.
Yeah.
But
No, the hell thing is the more the point of the doors was never locked. And so it's your own personal torments in hell.
yeah, that's why. That's my theory on why narcissists can't be cured. Is because in order to stop being a narcissist, they'd have to die, because it's a personality disorder, and personality is who you are.
So, could a narcissist die and then stop being a narcissist?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, could they have an ego death?
Yeah, that would.
Like a total ego death. Not just a fraction of ego, which I've experienced to some extent, but like a total ego death.
But then, so you can't really cure narcissism in that sense then, can you? Because the narcissist has to die.
Yeah.
You can have the same body.
We'll have some of the memories.
Well, they'll have the memories. Maybe, I mean, there'll be different memories, but because you have to look at everything you do differently.
Yeah.
But if the narcissist is the person, then for them to...
Well, some born-again Christians were narcissists that actually did have total ego deaths, and they do act like a completely different person. I mean, maybe they weren't a narcissist clinically, but they're like jerks or like super big businessmen, whatever. Yes, they're very fat cats. No.
Sam Vankin, the leading expert on narcissism, I believe he's the leading expert. He doesn't think you can cure narcissism.
Okay. But I'm just like, there's those stories, and the stories have to come from somewhere, of these people who like go off and become a Zen monk, and they're completely different than who they were, or they are a born Christian, like they have a near-life death experience. It's like God spoke to me, or...
He said he's never seen a case of narcissism being cured. It could be people with various things. Yeah.
Yes.
However, Sam Vankin is a narcissist. And...
My mental disorder is so amazingly debilitating that it is uncurable.
Yeah, I think maybe not quite like that, but I do think he might think that way because he's a narcissist. And if he believed he could cure himself, well, then what on earth is he doing? Why is he a narcissist?
Yeah.
Because he thinks narcissism is a form of post-traumatic stress, where it's a defense mechanism, and it's the only thing keeping you safe from the world. And if you give up on that mechanism, you'll give up on everything you've ever done, everything you've made.
So there is actual Christian stories, and there are Buddhist stories about doing that, though. About giving up everything you've ever had. And then, so you can be a person.
It means you have to... So there's something really messed up, actually.
Like, those stories exist. Like, they are in the mythos of humanity.
Richard Bach, he writes a lot of books about these airy-fairy modern Buddhist seagulls and airplane guys and whatnot.
Jonathan Living Seagull?
Yeah, Richard Bach, he writes those.
Yeah.
And No Such Place is Far Away. I think they're kind of messed up. Like, if you break your femur, you get morphine, right?
Yeah.
You don't prescribe morphine to people that don't have broken legs. Ego death is not something to be handing out like candy.
No.
Your ego is yourself. That is not something you stick in your bog standard self-help book or your this is how you become enlightened type thing. That is wrong and dangerous, I think, I'd argue.
Yeah.
We grew up on a lot of those stories.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should have, because you try to emulate that and it tears you apart, I think, because you're trying to... There's this idea of egotism, which I don't know if it's popular or not, but in my life, and I think yours, it was considered bad to have an ego. But ego is absolutely necessary.
When I was driving home one time, um, so one of the things that was big for me, I don't know about you, but every kid gets a medal. And you try to, well, one of the things is don't be egotist, but another thing is you don't want to do anything that hurts another person's ego. That was big for me, like in such sort of words, like
Right.
you don't want to hurt. And there's this whole thing where gruff adults of the older generation is like, it's a good thing to get beaten down or whatever. I think they're kind of wrong in that it's not good to get beaten, but what it really is you shouldn't teach kids that it's never have your ego hurt. You should teach them how to make it so their ego isn't hurt.
Yeah. Well, and
that's the thing that sort of both sides miss on that. It's like,
well, that's what the beating teaches you.
Yeah.
It teaches you that you can keep your convictions even if you can trust yourself even if everyone else doubts you.
Yeah.
I had a dream 2 or 3 nights ago. It's a nightmare I have a lot, where I'm in university and I've got a bunch of assignments due and I haven't done any of them. And I'm failing like a class or something.
You too?
And it's awful. Yeah, all the time.
I get that I've taken a 13th year of high school, because now how you can take an extra year of high school. So I've taken an extra year of high school, but I sort of get in my head, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter because I've already graduated. It's just I've taken the 13th year for whatever. So these classes don't matter as much, but I still have them back in my mind. It's like, oh, but I am failing them and I should just drop out before it counts on a record or anything.
So, yeah, I have this nightmare quite a bit. And in the dream, I feel like I'm getting told I'm being lazy and I'm being stupid and a bunch of other things. And when I went to UVic, I did do quite poorly in some of my classes. In like half of them, roughly, I think. And so I think that's where the dream comes from. A lot of it is just that whole like... But this dream was different than the normal nightmare. Because in the dream, I'm sitting in the class and the teacher is berating me in front of the whole class. And I'm talking about...
Quite the personal touch. They must really care about you to berate you in such a big school environment.
Some teachers are just so petty.
No. Well, there's that too.
I had a friend, he was late for class.
Yeah, because I was thinking on the level, like, they must really care, because I've had teachers like that who, why they berate the students is they really care about them.
I had a friend who's late for class, and the teacher in a class of like 200 people stopped the class and said, "Oh, thank you for finally joining us now that we're over your interruption, we can get on with the class." It's like, he came in at the back of the class, I know him, he's a good guy, he probably just went in and sat down. Wouldn't have disturbed anyone. The only one missing out was him for coming to the class 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
And instead the teacher made it everybody's problem because the teacher was so fragile they couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And that's where the fragile ego comes from. It's not that the ego's bad, it's that the fragility's bad.
Yeah.
You need a strong ego.
Yes.
This teacher's fragile ego couldn't handle it. It's not get rid of the ego. Ooh, lose your sense of self. No, it's trust yourself.
Yeah.
So in this dream...
Yeah, well, that's what I say. I don't... With the case where I say, like, a total ego death for narcissists, I'm not saying it's like everyone should lose their ego. It's just that might be the only thing that could stop.
No, I think it's the
narcissist.
only... I think a narcissist has to die. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in my dream, teacher's berating me, and I'm talking back to her, and she says, "Well, I'm going to like report you to the school and say how your grades are so terrible." I say, "Yeah, I'd like to see you do that." And everyone sitting with me laughs, and they're like...
Everyone laughed.
And they're like, "Yeah, you don't know what you're getting into." Because he is doing exceptional in every other class. So if you go to the principal and you say, "This student is doing absolutely terrible in my class," that says more about you than it does about the student.
Yeah.
And I woke up and I was just thinking about that dream because it's this nightmare and it's sort of haunting me, and I was thinking about it and I was like, wait a minute. It was UVic's fault. This whole time.
Yes, blame others for your problems.
Well, that was my next thought was, you need to take responsibility. But you can do both.
Yes.
And what you do is you say, this school sucks at teaching. I need to work twice as hard. Or, this school sucks at teaching. There are better teachers out there. I shouldn't waste a penny on these people.
Yeah.
And I did leave the school.
Yeah. So...
And I was very torn up about the decision at the time. But in that context, that was absolutely the correct decision.
Yeah. I play games a lot with my friends online. And one of the early annoying things I find that can happen is one of the games we play is Dota. And the skill gap between me and basically everyone else who plays it seems to only grow. And it's because I play the game far less than them, and I'm far less committed to it than them. And it's a competitive team game, so people can get frustrated if you're not doing as well as them. You're like, oh, you're bringing down the team. And at one point, one of my friends, a person I've known for quite a while, basically was sort of giving good advice to the whole overall game space, but he basically swore and said it quite rudely. And I stopped for a second and sort of was just thinking about it, and I said, no, that's not acceptable what you just did. Because before, a lot of times, like, oh, I get angry, I become sullen throughout the rest of the game, or it's like, oh, I'll try to do better than this because he was brave. But that has, no, you can't swear at me like that while we're playing.
And even if you're wrong in that situation, and he was in his right to swear at you, it's good to say, I think.
Yeah.
And because then it gives him a chance to retaliate against you and be like, no, you idiot, this is whatever reason.
Well, I accepted the advice, but I didn't accept the swear, was my thing. Like, I didn't accept the way he said it.
But if the swear was appropriate even, I think it's still good to have that out in the open. If you have a problem, you don't want to just stew in your resentment.
Yes, exactly.
Should you have that resentment? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
But it's probably better to have it in the open. Probably. I'm not going to be 100% on that because sometimes people just load you with their garbage and it's like, really? Just, this isn't my problem. This is your problem.
Man, you must be a really good listener.
Oh no, sometimes
It's not your duty.
it's not my duty to make you feel comfortable. Like,
Yeah.
you can't say I'm making you upset. That's not how it works. You make you upset.
Yeah.
And you have no right to my time. We're not communists with no individuality or freedom. And you can't burden me with your problems because if someone comes, like a histrionic person comes to you, or a narcissist, or a borderline, they have endless problems.
Yes.
And they try to put them on other people for different reasons. Histrionics do it for attention, borderlines do it because they're lonely, narcissists do it because...
Everything's about them.
They're just making the world's their plaything, basically.
They are the center of the universe.
But all of them are giving you, just handing you off problems. And even if you solve these problems, they have one more because solving the problems is the thing that generates the problems.
Yeah. So was it?
It's an endless hole.
You don't solve the problem, you solve the person.
What, is that some sort of like, you shoot them or...
I mean, that is an option if that's what you need to do. But it's
or you just
giving
tune them out.
Giving a man a fish versus teaching them how to fish. Right. That thought.
But you can't change another person.
Yes.
So, like a narcissist comes to you, they're loading problems on you. You just gotta be like, no, I'm not. This is your garbage. It's not mine. I don't think you necessarily need to cut people out of your lives. But I think you can cut. You don't have to listen to everything they say.
Yeah.
You can just... there is actually a technique called gray rock technique for dealing with narcissists where you just go, yep. Nope. Yep. You never tell a narcissist you're doing that.
Yep.
Because a lot of them are aware of it.
Yep.
The main reason a narcissist would learn about narcissism or talk to a therapist is to get techniques for being a better narcissist. Sam Vankin says that you bring a narcissist into therapy and the best thing you can do is help their friends. Because you're not going to help them. You're basically going to tell their friends this is how you deal with them.
The gray rock technique reminded me of something from Scooby-Doo. Where, so one of the villains that shows up is this guy, he rides a motorcycle and he's robbing people. But he's also incredibly Chad and he steals their women and he talks to the woman and they fall under his spell and then he drives away with them on his motorcycle. And eventually they catch the guy and they reveal who it is and then the cop who's there with the gang asks him, what are you doing? Was it some sort of trick or spell that you're using to bamboozle our womenfolk? He's like, well, no, I just, after being in so many different reading groups because he's a librarian, I realized the technique, the secret to a woman's heart, is just listening to them. And then the sheriff's like, no, there's got to be more to it than that. There has to be something more. And I goes, okay, fine, you're right. And he holds up a pair of earplugs. Sometimes it just gets to be too much. I have to use these. And I'm just like, oh, phew. I knew there's something more to it. And at the end of the episode, they're all in the mystery machine driving off. And Daphne's talking to Fred and like saying a bunch of heartfelt things. And Fred's like, yep, totally agree with you, Daphne. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yep, all right, Daphne. And then he takes out a pair of earplugs and says, man, these things are great. And then Velma's like, oh, come on, Fred, that's ridiculous. Shaggy would never do that. And Shaggy's like, of course, Daphne, I like food. Then he also has a pair of earplugs in.
Well, that's the difference between a woman and someone with a personality disorder. The personality disorder person cares that you're not listening. The woman is doing it for your own benefit. So if you don't take that benefit, they'll leave you.
Yeah.
And because they value themselves, and they'll find someone that actually does listen to them.
Yeah.
Whereas the narcissist and the borderline and the histrionic, it's basically they're trying to get rid of boredom in a sense. They're trying to fill some hole, different kind of hole, depending on the type of personality disorder. But when you don't pay attention to them, if they notice, they get angry at you for your failings rather than saying, well, this person sucks, I don't want to deal with them.
Yeah.
Instead, you are directly attacking them. And it becomes about them, because it's always about them. For all the personality disorders, the only person that matters is them.
Isn't there a personality disorder about completely giving yourself to someone else?
Yeah, borderline.
Yeah.
But it's still all about you.
Is it?
Yeah, because you're destroying that other person by giving yourself to them.
I thought a part of the person who's giving themselves, like the other person's also borderline if they keep happening.
They can be codependent, yeah, with you. Yeah.
And so they're letting themselves be destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, narcissists...
Is it still about them if they're letting themselves be destroyed?
Yeah, because then that's what codependency is. You're like, look at me, I'm a martyr. Oh, I'm so wonderful.
Yeah, right.
It's like Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah, even if you're the only person who knows your martyrdom, the stoic martyr in your own head is still not a good thing.
That was I've talked about this. That was the problem with the author of codependency, like the person that invented the term. Her husband kept going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was doing great. And then he'd come home and she'd be like, I'm the wife of an alcoholic, and you're ruining my identity.
Stop getting better.
Yeah. And it wasn't done that blatantly. It was much more subtle, but it was like, she was like, oh, it's okay. You don't need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll take care of you. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it kept stunting him from getting better. Because Alcoholics Anonymous is really, really good at what they do.
They just basically admit that they're alcoholics, don't they? And they figure out why they're alcoholics?
No, you join a cult. It's absolutely a cult. You make Alcoholics Anonymous the greatest thing in your life, the biggest thing in your life, the most important thing, and it supplants everything else. And by doing that, your addictions just go away. Like, it works for it works for drugs, and it works for alcohol, and it works for a bunch of stuff. And they know it's a cult. Like, it's not a hidden thing. Like, that's their goal, is to completely take over your life. And it works.
So do you leave AA once you're...
No, you don't. I don't think you leave. I think you just kind of stick with them.
Huh. Just think, that puts the men's group into perspective.
Yeah, I guess it does.
Because I even said to them at one point that it's like, it should end.
Yeah.
And they sort of disagreed with me, and I have stopped going because the things that I want to work through with them to extent, like for myself, I think I work through them to the extent, and there's just other things I want to do besides go to that.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in Alcoholics Anonymous, so it'd be interesting if people left it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about because maybe you go back to addiction because you're no longer addicted to the cult. But with the men's groups and those sort of men's circles, that thought, like, sure, you can have a support group that maybe you go back to, but I feel like the ultimate goal of a men's group is leaving it.
Well, Alcoholics Anonymous, you're breaking really rough stuff, like physical dependencies.
Yeah.
So...
Well, the men's group, a lot of it is mental dependencies, which can be as harsh. I mean, there's no chemicals involved. Well, maybe there is because you reduce them, but it is.
Actually, I saw this. The guy was talking about how chemical versus physical. He doesn't actually think there's much of a difference. He's not a psychologist, but it was a great thought he had. He said, I don't think there's much of a difference because it's all in your head anyways, either way. Like, it is still a physical dependence because those are chemicals in your head needing something. And I thought, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, because one of the biggest things I know about men's groups is from No More Mr. Nice Guy reading it. It's one of the bigger starters of them. And, I mean, part of a men's group is also basically guys who don't know how to make friends with men and they don't have any male friends. And so one of the points of it is basically, alright, this is a group where you start meeting up with other guys so you can talk about guy things. And then once you've done it enough, you actually can just hang out with them without having to be at the men's group. Because you're figuring out, oh yeah, guys aren't scary, they're not bullies. It's not like my mother said, I don't have to constantly be validating myself to women. I can also validate myself to men, and men validate very differently than women.
And that sounds like something you could get over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas maybe you can't get over cocaine or alcohol. Maybe you do leave Alcoholics Anonymous. So how it works is...
Because I know you can, like, you get a little badge of how many
Yeah.
days. And like,
So they have this... They have a saying, it's trust the process.
Yeah.
And how Alcoholics Anonymous works is they say it works if you believe it works.
Hmm.
And it's all about just, it works. You believe it works, believe it works, believe it works. And once you believe it works, it works. And they discovered that it works.
So, in Fight Club, I haven't seen it, but I know the synopsis of it, and I've watched guys basically quick rundown of it. The main character can't sleep at all.
Yeah, so he goes to a ton of different organizations,
and
men's groups and whatnot.
And whenever he cries a whole bunch and has like the big fat guy hug him, he can get sleep at night.
Yeah.
And he seems cynical about, though, the different things he's going to, and he's basically using them as a sleep aid.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tom Cruise is taking him over.
Yeah, I only actually ever read the first chapter of it because I was lent the book by a friend and then he needed it back, so I never actually read it.
Yeah, I just know his alter ego is played by Tom Cruise.
But he was part of a gynecomastia self-help group, I think it's called. It's like men with breasts, basically. And that was the big fat guy.
Ah.
Because being fat tends to do that, and various stressors and puberty can do that temporarily. And yes, he goes to the self-help group, and yeah.
And then the Fight Club is a self-help group, kind of.
So Infinite Jest is largely about Alcoholics Anonymous.
Is it?
Yeah. And it's also about other self-help groups. Like there's a regression group where you pretend you're a child to get the love that you never got.
I hate that conceptually.
And I find it really creepy.
It's repulsive.
I
find all infantilization repulsive.
There's a therapist on YouTube. He talks a lot about healing the inner child. And I think, I don't know, it seems a bit wrong.
Well,
you shouldn't have an inner child.
Yeah, well...
Your inner child should grow up.
Yeah.
Should grow the hell up.
Yeah.
Kill your inner child.
What's his name perspective, rather, on it than also the killer grow up. The writer of The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, what's his?
His childish things.
When I was a boy, I read fairy tales under the cover. Now that I'm a man, I read them out in the open because I gave up on childish things like being afraid of being mistaken for a child.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the inner child, you need to heal your inner child.
The author of that book, though, is it's childishness or that perspective. You just be as you are, and you read the fairy tales.
Yeah, you don't have an inner child. You have yourself. Those people, they're like, oh, I'm like a kid at heart. It's like, then grow up. I've talked about this before. It's probably one of my more
I also agree
angry rants, but it's... I don't know if you've seen... It's one of the later Abba Preaches where there's this millionaire.
I only watch them sparingly.
He's like 60. He's got a 23-year-old girlfriend. And he's like, she's more mature than me. She says I'm like a 15-year-old. And they're celebrating their 3-month anniversary, and he's super happy. And it's like, man, you're broken.
Yeah.
You're broken inside. You're acting like a complete child. What 60-year-old celebrates a 3-month anniversary?
Yeah.
What 60-year-old is less mature than a 23-year-old? When I was 23...
I can actually see a 90-year-old celebrating a 3-month anniversary.
Yeah, because there's maybe not as much time
left. Yes.
Yeah.
But 60, you still actually got time.
And when I was 23, I had a crush on a 19-year-old. But I didn't want to date her.
Yeah.
Because I thought she's way too young for me. Way too young.
Yeah.
I was like, I could mentally dominate her with those 4 years of experience. It wouldn't be a relationship of equals. And I would think she was like an idiot in so many situations. I wouldn't allow her to grow properly.
Yeah.
And you're saying that a 23-year-old is more mature than you at the age of 60.
Yeah.
You're a sickening man-child. So you don't have an inner child, you are a child.
And some people are.
And that's not a good thing. Like, oh, I'm young at heart. Then grow up.
Well...
Idiots.
So, one of the things about someone who's never grown up is... One of the things about being a child is innocence. A 6-year-old man's not innocent. I mean, maybe. But the delight of children is that they're innocent and they're discovering the world and everything's fresh and new to them. And it balances out their inability to... Like, 3-year-olds are kind of terrible people.
Mm.
but they have the innocence and the lack of responsibility of a 3-year-old as well. Whereas if you are still a 3-year-old or even a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, when you're 60, you're mostly going to be that terrible person and not the delightful, nice part of those kids.
Could you define innocence as understandable naivety?
Yes.
Like, I can forgive you for that action because you don't know better.
Yeah.
Because throughout university, in poetry and writing in English classes, everyone talked about innocence. And I kept asking teachers and students, give me the definition of innocence. And none of them could. And I was going to ask you when you brought up the term innocence. But then you said enough that I think you actually gave me my first definition of innocence in my life. So thank you.
Yeah.
Because no one, it's all these loss of innocence stories.
Well, so there's
But what is innocence? And now I've been told.
in Dragon Ball, Goku.
Innocence is forgivability.
Yeah. So Goku in Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z, but Dragon Ball. The story starts out, I think, when he's like 7 or 10 or something. Like, he's really young. And he actually has a really depressing backstory so he was found in the jungle by his grandfather. And he raised him until he died. His grandfather raised him until he died. And so for the past 3 years, Goku was living alone in the jungle with only the knowledge that his grandfather imparted on him. So he's this wild monkey boy in the woods. Very much the story of the Monkey King, except he doesn't have a monkey army that worships him. And then Bulma comes along, and she's a teenager. She's like 17. And she encounters Goku in her car. And the very beginning of the Dragon Ball stories, like the first 5 episodes, is basically Goku getting introduced to the world, that there's other humans, that there's actually women. Like, he didn't know there were men and women. So that really weirds him out. And it's like, there's these cars, there's loads of other people in the world. There's not just him and his grandfather.
Isn't there a statue of a monk in San Marino who died at the age of 86 or something?
He never knew women exist. Well, he might have known, but he never saw them. Yeah, but so Goku, as a kid, like the kid Goku...
He doesn't need to go to heaven.
Kid Goku is incredibly innocent. And part of Goku's, even as an adult, is he's so focused on martial arts that he hasn't really let anything else in. So Goku is now ignorant. Because he went from innocent to ignorant.
Because you now have expectations.
Yes.
And if you don't meet those expectations... Yeah, so when you're young, it's forgivable to be ignorant. But when you're older, it's not forgivable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Goku's gone to ignorant, and it makes his character less charming than Kid Goku, because his whole thing is he's meant to be this lovable, innocent fool. But now that he's a full-grown adult with a grandchild, he's not innocent, he's ignorant.
And that's why you have, like, in, what's it called? Mice and Men? You have the lovable murderer. Because he is innocent.
Yeah.
He doesn't know better. Even though he's a murderer.
Yeah.
He is innocent. And
it's because his brain's messed up,
yeah,
right?
So you can't really expect him to be.
And that was part of the reasoning behind asylums, is these people are dangerous, but we have to look after them, so we'll put them here.
Yeah,
because they can't go to
innocent.
prison. We shouldn't punish them. That's the whole thing of pleading insanity.
Right, you're pleading innocent.
Yeah.
Huh.
But we can't allow an insane person to be in society because they're an adult that can break someone else's neck. They're not a little kid.
Right, new plan for the time machine. I go back to university, slap a bunch of people.
I didn't know that you didn't know that.
Never found a satisfactory answer to innocence. Even looking it up, I've just never found one I liked. Yeah.
Japan, win!
Why Japan?
Well, I was using Goku.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Although I've known that without Goku. But, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's hard to not be someone else. Or it's hard to be someone else, I guess. So I don't know if this is the case, but I feel like my development was weird. I don't really remember much ignorance and much what would you call it? Turmoil from puberty, let's say. So when I was like very young, I was a caretaker.
Yeah.
And I was paying attention to finances and how people were doing all around me ever since I was probably like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And throughout puberty, I was very stable emotionally, I think. I'm less stable emotionally now, actually. I do wonder if maybe some hormonal protracted puberty to the point where I'm doing that now somehow. I don't know.
So,
I looked up, like, there is people that they have really low testosterone and that happens, but I don't seem to have the other symptoms of that.
um, so I don't know, because you're saying that 4, it makes more sense when you're 7 and 8.
Yeah,
This
well,
case.
because of divorce.
Yeah, divorce. It quite often happens in older siblings. But this is very much the case that stressed children, and it happens a lot in divorce, especially the stressed older sibling, age remarkably fast.
Hmm.
And it's like they go through puberty quicker to an extent, but puberty is weird because it's biology and different factors can accelerate it, but they mentally have to change. And then when that mental change goes through, so they mentally change and they're a exceptionally mature prepubescent child, and then they go through puberty, that causes absolutely, in a lot of cases, the terrible teens is actually that case of the mentally mature child hitting puberty. And it's like, they were such a good child and suddenly they became horrible.
Yeah. And I didn't do that, but I feel like I'm almost doing that now. Much later, like 27. Actually, no, I don't think it was 4 or 5. It probably was when it would have been grade 3. So I would have been 8.
Yeah.
Just slightly after the divorce or before the divorce. The thing I really remember, well,
Hidden Valley was really weird because one of the things I remember from Hidden Valley was my parents were divorced and the only other kid like me was there's only one other kid like me.
yeah,
No
it
one
was
else
quite rare, which is nice,
Yeah.
but it was very rare. Well, a lot of my friends' parents and your friends' parents had been divorced, but they'd remarried.
Yes.
And so we didn't know them as divorced parents.
Yeah.
So my early memories, I guess, would be I was looking after you even when I was 4 and 5. Like, you would cry and I'd run and get your stuff for you and whatnot. But maybe that's just a doting older sibling.
Yeah.
But then the thing that really stands out to me is we went to Disneyland, and I tried to prevent you from going on rides, and I prevented myself from going on a number of rides because I didn't want it to cost our parents too much money.
Mm.
And I was trying to rein you in to not bring them down.
But if you pay for the ticket.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's where rationalism leads.
Yeah.
It's the work of the devil.
They weren't financially distressed, were they?
They were not, like, great. They weren't terrible. They were bad right after that.
Yeah.
Right after Disneyland, they're doing really bad.
Wasn't that the 2008 crash, though?
No, that didn't really affect Canada.
No.
This was 2003.
Because I remember...
This is 2003.
I remember at one point, Dad basically told us that he wasn't doing financially great.
Oh, he told me that all the time.
Yeah, well, he told both of us, like, I'm not doing financially well, and so we're going to have to cut back on some things for a bit.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's fine to say to your kids. You don't go to them for support.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was gone to for support a few times.
But that's, like, one time I remember, I think, when we were, like...
But...
Well, when I was in grade 3.
It's totally fine to go to your kid and say, low on money, gonna cut things back, don't worry about it, I got it, but we just got to cut some expenses. Yeah. That's a fine thing to do to your kids. But you do not go to your kid and say, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You don't do that. Because I remember I was like, I wanted to give him money and help him out. And I don't actually know if he really... Here's the thing. He might have not been relying on me, but I thought he was relying on me. So even if he wasn't, I was taking responsibility.
Yeah.
For something I shouldn't have taken responsibility for. So that was the thing. And looking after you through the divorce, we're going back and forth houses, all that. Yeah. Looking after you. And then Mom was in the hospital, and so I was trying very hard to not...
Where were we even living while she was in the hospital?
We were here. Our few people were taking care of us.
Is that when Ernie?
Yeah. Yeah, so our closest thing we have to a godfather, I guess. He took care of us, and also our now stepdad took care of us.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Did she take care of us?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there was that, and I was trying not to create division between our parents, so I was going back in between both of them, talking to them, and I remember I wrote in a notebook who I liked more at the moment. I had like this little point tabs I would keep. I'd be like, I'm on Mom's side. No, I'm on Dad's side. No, I'm on Mom's side. And So yeah, the Disneyland one is a big one that stands out to me. Another one was when one of my best friends moved away. She was crying, and I decided I would take that on to myself, and I went over and gave her a hug, like, I'll take care of you. And maybe that's more of a mature thing than a bad thing, because we're the same age, right?
Yeah.
But that was a moment of when I was quite young of me saying I will, and I think it's good to stand up to an extent. So I don't think that's bad, that one. Looking after your parents isn't good. I don't think they wanted me to, but I was. Whether or not it did anything, it's probably bad for them, really, if anything, even if I was. Yeah, so I could see that, and if you say that affects hormones and whatnot, I could see that causing some weirdness.
Yeah, no, kids can definitely grow up faster, and people can age, like...
Because I always hear this talk about people, like, they think about... I was thinking about JRPGs earlier today, right?
Just on the people aging faster. If you look at some of the Afghanistan fighters, the Taliban, and you see, like, these guys who are in their 50s, you ask them how old they are, a lot of them are, like, 25 or 30.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? How? And so, imagine that same thing can happen to kids.
Well, I hear all these stories about, I miss when I was kids and I'd stay up all night and I would have no responsibilities and I did this and that. And I think, what life were you living? Like, or people say, oh, this video game reminds me when all I would do is just sit back and play video games. And it's like, what? What are you talking? It's like, you've always had responsibilities. What are you talking about? And I was wondering earlier today, because I was just watching this video on JRPGs. I watch a lot of videos on JRPGs because I don't understand them at all, and I want to understand. It's like an alien trying to study humans.
What is it to love?
And I would
the AIs.
I
was to love?
Wondering if you have a really stable childhood, if JRPGs are nicer. And why I was thinking that is because they're very much a hot bath and like a hot bubble bath and a hot chocolate type of thing, right? It's you sit back and you let it wash over you, right?
Well, so I know.
But if you sit back and let it wash over you when your life is when you're the caretaker, that's when the wolves steal your children.
Yeah.
You can't sit back. You have to be learning, you have to be growing, and so you can't play a JRPG. It's too slow.
So I know there's this thing you do, which is you go for very, very long walks. And I've been thinking about this because I go for longer walks now too. There's an interesting thing about going for a walk, especially if you have like you're not walking about downtown. Like if you start at home or start at a car, like you drive to a point and you walk away, is every step further away you take from your location back is time you're also going to have to spend walking back to that location. And so every single step further is the acceptance that you're going to take the same amount of time getting back as you have going to where you're going. And if you go for a walk's sake, so you're not going to a location, you're not visiting something, you're walking for walking's sake, and it could be exercise, whatever though, you're basically under the acceptance and the freedom of there's nothing you can do to get back faster. Like maybe you can run, I guess, or like take a short route, but still, you're going the distance you're going. And I actually had a very weird encounter with that this last week.
And that's to do with patience?
Yeah, with patience, but also just accepting that, like, oh, I'm stressed. I always have to be doing something, the next thing. I can't have time. Going for a walk forces you to have time. And something that forces you to have even more time is, luckily, it was a very warm day. It was only -1 out. So, you know the canyon. So I took a path that leads up towards the hill, not along the canyon. And I figured after a point, I'm getting kind of bored of this path. I don't want to take it going the same way back. So I'm going to cut across the forest, just wander through the snowy forest. And eventually I will hit the canyon trail, and then I can walk back home from there. Several things I didn't realize is the path I took diverges to the left away from the right side of that trail, which is where I wanted to go. So the further I went down that one trail, the longer walk's going to be. There is basically what some people consider a mountain in between that trail and where I want to go. It's a hill, but it's a long hike. And so I started walking. And it's like, well, I'm not going to get lost. Like, I'd be in this area. I can hear the canyon. I can hear, like, it's really easy to hear the cars rushing out. And I relatively know where the sun is. And I was walking, I had a walking stick with me. It's a good thing it's 1 degree out, but then the sun went behind some clouds and it's getting colder. And I was like, I could die out here. Like, even though I'm right next to town, I could die out here. Like, if it's a bit colder, if it gets colder, if I don't get back before it's light, if I don't find a trail, I could die. And I was thinking, well, I know the canyon's that way because I see the light coming that way, and I hear the noise. And finally, when I got to the tree, the top of the hills, I I realized I had no idea where the canyon was because I was always going uphill, so I couldn't see the light of the canyon. And the sound I'm hearing, the highway has a bend. And so I was walking at a diagonal, which was a longer path than walking a straightaway. And I was like, no, I should know my direction. I just keep walking this way. At one point, I considered taking out my phone with a compass app so that I could look. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have that much charge and it's cold out. And I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm walking, so I turned off the audiobook in case I needed to make an emergency call and made sure my phone was powered down and warm. And I was sort of getting to the point, like, it felt really surreal, and luckily I was only lost for about an hour and a half. But I was lost for an hour and a half in the woods at 3 o'clock, and it gets dark at 5. And I knew that. And it's like, once it gets dark, it gets, like, there'll still be light, but it gets cold. And I opened my jacket while I was doing this walk where I started getting worried, because I knew that if I started sweating, if it got really cold and I was wet from the sweating, it'd get even worse. So I'd suffer the cold of having the wind hit my front, so I wouldn't have the sweat earlier on. But it was this weird thing. It's like, well, now I'm lost. And like that small map pack section, it's like, no, don't panic. Don't panic. Just keep walking. Walk towards the sun, even if it's not the direction you're supposed to go. Like, walk towards the sun and the sound for now. And this direction, like, even when the sun sets, this direction will send you in the right way.
Nice thing about the encroachment of cities everywhere is if you walk in a straight line, you'll find something.
It's hard to walk in a straight line, though, when you're in the forest and there's snow everywhere.
It is very hard, but that's what the sun is for.
Well, also that's what the hill is for. I knew once I got to the top of the hill, I would know where I was. And it turned out that, like, I got to the top of the hill, and the other side of the hill, a lot less trees, it cleared out. I still wasn't where I expected to show up, but I was like, alright, so I know where I am. Like, I actually been to that spot before. If I walk this way, I'll find a path. I walk that way, I found the path. And then it was a really nice path. I followed that path, got to the canyon cliff, followed the cliff back.
I like getting lost, but with darkness coming, that gets a bit freakier.
And in the winter when it's cold.
Yeah.
And also, I was like, I don't have any fire lighting supplies on me. So that was another thing.
Yeah, I always have some on me because...
Yeah, well, this is made so I put them back into my winter jacket. But also my thoughts, it'd be really embarrassing if I had to call 911. Basically, yeah, I need a search and rescue. I'm lost somewhere next to Travis Canyon. Yeah, I don't have any fire lighting, so...
You know, it'd be even more embarrassing just dying out there.
Yes.
Like, just like... As you're freezing to death, you just write sorry on the snow beside you. Some sort of suicide note. No.
Well, that was my concern.
I'm just a moron.
My concern, though, is my phone was dying because it's cold now. It doesn't have a great battery. And so it's the thought of, well, will I be to the point where I need a phone call to ask for help? Will my phone be dead at that point? And I don't know yet. And so if I was lost in a different location, because... there's only so far I could walk in any direction unless I started walking in circles. Even then, if I started walking in circles...
You'll see your footprints.
Yes, and I'd also hit a path, because there's paths everywhere, and there's other people out there. But I was like, I'm pretty certain if I walk in any direction.
That's how the guy dies in To Light a Fire. He's an experienced woodsman, but he just gets slightly turned around, and a couple mistakes, and he's dead.
Yes, I definitely would see my footprints, though. Well, another solution, I could turn around and follow my footprints back.
Yeah.
Because I was... lost in the loosest sense of the terms.
Well, it becomes a real sunk cost fallacy, though.
Yeah, exactly. And then, that's what I was being concerned about, being out there.
By the time you turn around and follow your footprints back, you it's too dark to see them, and then you're...
Yeah. But it made me really think about the thing, don't deviate from the path. Like, you know the dark forest, if you step off the path, you die? Like, it's true.
Yeah, I've actually...
Well, especially, like, we have civilization everywhere now, but if you don't have that, holy cow, you die!
I've been on a few, my friend and I, we were hiking up some mountains, and we ended up on the wrong mountain. And it was a lot of work to get there, and then we had to hike over to the next mountain to get back on track. And it's a mountain range that's near town, but it's a mountain range, so you can actually get lost back there forever.
Yeah.
You probably won't, because you just go to the top of the mountain and then walk along the ridge. But you could.
Yeah.
Someone did that once, actually, near town. They actually ended up, I think, on the bike trails or something, and they were found. And they had gotten lost somewhere completely different.
Oh, it's ridiculous, though. If someone's lost in the woods, it's something like 48 hours, and you're basically dead. Like, that's a search and rescue's opinion.
Because of exposure and panic running around. It's all sorts of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, like 48 hours and you're dead.
Wow.
And they'll keep searching even after that because some people know survival and you can last longer. But even if you know survival, if you don't have the right gear, it's basically like...
Well, I think knowing survival, part of that is you always have the right gear.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's like about maybe 4 days and you're still hooped if you don't have water or anything.
Well, there's also just bad luck and wolves, coyotes.
Bears.
Yeah. Just stuff can happen.
Falling and getting impaled by a tree.
Yeah.
That's actually a really big one.
There was
tree impalements.
That trapper, big woods guy. He walked into a tree.
And stabbed him in his
femoral artery, and he died.
Yeah.
That one freaks me out all the time. I think about that a lot. Like, he's probably the only person in history that ever happened to. But it just, whenever I'm bushwhacking now, I'm like freaked out.
Yeah.
I'm like guarding my legs, like, ooh. I get stabbed in the throat like that.
Yeah.
But it's so, this experienced bushman, he even got to his truck and he just didn't have enough strength to drive himself. Like, it just, jeez, messes with this. I think the lesson there, he probably could have saved himself if he had thought he couldn't save himself. Like, he tried to drive for help, but if he had just gotten to the highway, applied pressure and waited, that probably would have been better off.
Yeah.
But
still, like, it's hard to apply pressure there. And not many people know where you're actually supposed to apply pressure if you get hit in the carotid artery.
The femoral?
Yeah, femoral. Is you have to basically crush your pelvis, like right above your groin.
Yeah, you might lose your leg, I guess.
Yeah, but though, so because you're bleeding from like that inside point, it's like, where do I apply pressure? My hips are in the way. And it like goes through. You actually have to basically crush the area right above your groin.
Oh.
And so you can lose both legs and like cause a ton of damage if you're applying the right kind of pressure.
Yeah, and that was just really bad luck.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate. I was actually on the subject of innocence or youth stuff. One thing as well, my memory's pretty good. And you know how you see parents, they interact with kids and they say these embarrassing things or they do weird things. I remember a lot of those. Like, I remember people getting inexplicably naked in front of me or saying things, and I don't know. It's like, be careful around your kids is all I'm saying, because you don't know what they'll remember.
You'll scar them for life.
I don't remember too many, but I do remember a few. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it weirds me out sometimes.
Oh, you're bringing some of them back to me.
But no, the thing I wanted to bring up was actually... Like, I always see Sargon talking about protecting children's innocence. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know what that means. Now maybe I'd know what I mean, maybe. You're protecting their ability to remain ignorant to their actions. I don't know why you'd protect that.
So protecting the children's innocence is... Imagine if you weren't told about these financial things at all.
Right.
And you won't have to deal with that burden.
Right, so not giving children things they...
Not unduly burdening them.
Right. Things they can't handle and don't need to handle.
Yeah. There are certain things that people don't
burden children with things that
they don't need to know.
They're busy dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff.
They're busy with becoming people.
Yeah. Like you can't just dump everything on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Wow. That's why we keep you around. Also, because you do all the work for the podcast, but also that. So
sometimes smart people are really stupid.
I wouldn't know about that. I am neither.
I think you're smarter than me.
I don't know. It's a hard thing to quantify. There's raw brain power. I don't think my raw brain power is. I think it's above average. Like, if I'm being honest, I think my raw brain power is above average. But yours is probably equal or slightly higher than mine.
I think my raw brain power is average.
I don't think so.
Because I'm not smart, I'm clever.
You figure out stuff pretty quick.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not smart, I'm clever.
No, that's raw brain power. Figuring stuff out quickly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you have quite high raw brain power. Me, I think it is above average, but I'm not sure how much it is. But there's a sort of knowledge aspect as well that you have to factor in. And I don't know how you'd quantify, but it's kind of.
No, you're smarter. No, you're smarter. You're smarter.
We need someone we can call stupid, so it's not just this podcast being a circle jerk. Like someone on the podcast. Well, that's why it's also called The Fool. But it's I always feel on edge when I say something good about myself or you.
Go find an idiot
on the podcast. Yeah, because I just you know, I don't want it to just be this weird back patting thing.
There's this scene in Rick and Morty where there's this device which is cloning Morty's dad.
Yeah.
It's like creating his wife's image of him. And so before it's creating these miserable, snivelly little worms that are awful. And then Jerry, he's the husband, basically does this amazing act to help protect his wife. And suddenly the Jerrys that start getting produced are these big buff guys who are all shirtless and they're awesome. They're taking down like the problem. And then Jerry's like, wait, I know what I need to do. Hey, I can't remember his wife's name, so I am so awesome and great. And then she sort of gets this disgusted look on her face. Then a bunch of Jerrys start getting produced, and they all just have these confident, smug looks on their face. And they're all shaking each other's hands like, yeah, we're great, we're so good. And then they create this circle around her to protect her, and they're just shaking each other's hands, patting each other on the back.
So, yeah, like, this is one of those stories that I'm kind of loath to tell, but I'll try to keep it as back-patty-less as possible. But this was in...
I'll do the insulting for both of us.
All right.
Whoever's on hold.
And
I'll detract.
when I was in grade 3, I used to get compliments about being really humble. And it kind of went to my head. Like, actually.
I am the humblest. I am the top of the humble list.
Well, I didn't like it because I was like, you're kind of ruining my whole thing here if that's what my thing is. I have a different view of humility now where it's more the ability to realize you might not know everything.
Yes.
But yeah, it was just...
And not bigging yourself up.
Yeah, well, that would be vainglory, I
Yeah.
guess. And so, I guess humility could oppose arrogance and vainglory.
Yeah, well, the opposite of a sin is not the virtue. Virtue, like a lack of sin is not virtue.
Right, but performing the opposite action is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what the opposite of vainglory is. I don't know if that is humility or not.
Mm.
But the opposite of arrogance is definitely humility.
Yeah.
But there was a book when we were young called Where Did I Come From? Do you remember that book?
Nope.
It's like where babies come from?
Nope.
You don't remember it? Or are you
Nope.
just blocking it out?
Might be blocked out, but I don't remember it.
I know I can grab it.
When I block things out personally, I actually
I do
forget
it
things.
right.
No, it's true. I actually forget things.
When I'm in denial, I go all the way.
No, it's not denial. It's I go full Melkor of the atheist thing. Like, I no longer believe in God.
So I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 when I read it. 3 maybe, but I seem to remember reading it, and I wouldn't have been able to read until I was like 5 or 6. So maybe I was 6. I didn't learn to read for a while, so.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I learned to read before you at least.
I didn't learn to read until
You were 10 or so?
about that. It would have. I started actually learning how to read the most basic reading that I would consider reading when I hit grade 3.
Yeah, so you would have been 8, yeah. Yeah, so it's about where babies come from. It's full of pictures of naked people and people having sex and that sort of thing. And I don't know if that's something to give to children.
No.
I don't know if it negatively affected me or not, but I mean, you can't blame everything on the past, right? You got to move on at some point. So I'm not going to sit here in like a resentful stew about it. But I don't know. Society is weird right now too, so it's hard to say. But I think you and I have both had a bit of a stunted approach to relationships in some sense. Maybe not stunted, it's not the right term. Slow, delayed, I don't know.
I think, yeah, slow approach to relationships, not really understanding them.
Look, romantic I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I had a puppy dog relationship, sort of.
Where like someone put a leash on you and
walked... No, it's like the puppy dog love, like the kids who are too young to really understand it, but there's like childhood sweetheart.
Yeah.
Like I had a childhood sweetheart in kindergarten.
Yeah, that's pretty normal. But like,
well, it wasn't normal. We got teased for it, the two of us.
Yeah, that's normal too. That happened with me as well. Yeah, happens with a lot of people, I think. But like in high school, and I think it's just different. There's a societal aspect, right? But like in high school, I wasn't dating anyone.
Yeah.
I dated people one person right after high school. But I was wondering if it was that book's fault. Like, that seems like a bit of a stretch to blame everything on a single book. But I wonder how much that could frighten you off of relationships, how much it could give you odd expectations about relationships. I'll show you the book after the podcast, I guess.
I think I was just incompetent at them, because I did try pursuing them. I think I was just really incompetent at it.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, no, I actually tried pursuing relationships. I was just really bad at it.
I'm not really interested in relationships for the most part now. So, I mean, is that the book's fault? I mean, like, okay, this is going to sound crazy, and you can cut this out if you want, if it's too personal or something. Okay. I don't remember when this was, but you told me about this gender neutral stuff.
Mm.
And my reaction maybe, it wasn't like negative, I would say, but it wasn't the most accepting either, I would say, in some ways. I was just confused. I was like, what?
So was I.
And you gave me this comic. You're like, see, this makes perfect sense. I was like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. No, there's.
I think just honesty was what worked for me there. Like, I didn't reject it. I was like, sure, fine. Just, it doesn't make sense to me, but whatever.
Yeah, no, it's.
Doesn't mess with my life.
Yeah, that's honestly the best answers in some ways.
And I don't know if you still feel that way or not.
I don't. No.
Because I don't think it's necessarily wrong.
That was abnegation on my part. At that time, I didn't want to be me.
Yeah.
And that was one way to reject myself. And why I didn't want to be me is that was the worst. Yes, I can definitively say that was probably one of the worst times of my life, if not the worst.
Really?
Yes.
What was going on?
So I was about 13, I think.
Yeah.
13, 14. And around that time, I was doing the job as the page, as legislator. And I was doing school at the same time. And I had a full course load, so I was super stressed out.
Right.
It's a cliche, but I was probably dealing with a huge amount of puberty at the time as well. So
yeah, well, I was going to say, this is that puberty thing I missed out on.
Yeah, no, so I was dealing with that. I'm pretty certain that at that age, I was probably the most overweight I've ever been.
So that'll mess with your mind on a physical level as well, probably.
Yeah.
Like, forget like what your impression of yourself is, but that.
Yeah, so it's like the most overweight, least fit at the time.
Which just seems to be common among gender neutral people.
Yes.
Scary.
My eczema was the worst it had ever been.
That's your gender neutral. Give me 20. Drop it. Give me 20. We'll see how you feel after.
Yeah, no, my eczema, second worst it's ever been.
Right. So you're in a lot of pain.
Yeah, second worst. The worst it's ever been was when it's mutating.
Yeah, when you were little.
Yeah, and that was scary
And your fingernails melted.
Yeah, and I'm still not exactly certain how a skin condition can mutate and become contagious.
Was it contagious?
Yes, I wasn't allowed to be near you, touch you.
Really?
Yeah, we weren't allowed to play together physically.
Oh.
The doctor was worried that you would get it as well, and other people I'd touch.
That wasn't just because of open sores or something?
No.
Just blood transfer?
No, it was like my rash became contagious.
Oh.
And it was the eczema. I think my eczema probably had like a infection. It's not that mutated. I think that's just how I understood it, but I think it had an infection, which made it like a contagious sort of rash.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, so that's the worst it's ever been, but it was really bad at the time. That was probably
leprosy.
Because of my health. At 13 as well, I think also around that time, I was having more troubles with Dad.
And you just switched schools, I guess.
Yeah, I was having more troubles with Dad. I was having troubles with friends because they're kind of jerks. Yeah. So, no, there's a lot of bad stuff going on at that time.
Just everything came to a head.
Yes.
And for the full course load, I think to put that in perspective for listeners, you had a very different approach to school than a lot of people. You really, really cared about your grades.
Stupidly.
You put so much work into it. It paid off. You got crazy good marks, maybe not paid off. You got crazy good marks.
Yes.
You got what you wanted. I don't know if it was worth it, but you got what you wanted.
No, it wasn't. Here's the thing, right? So doing school to that point, so when I hit grade 12, I figured that out. And I don't know if you noticed this about grade 12, but I did way less work and still got about the same marks in grade 12. But especially in university and college, I still worked harder than a lot of people, but I also didn't work all that hard because at that point I'd figured out what kind of things got you good marks.
Yeah, that would help.
And what's bad about that is it makes you kind of nihilistic to the whole concept of education if you know
it's all about pleasing the teacher. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, the other thing I think that was causing your problem, I could be wrong here, I'm not you, but you wanted to be like your big brother sort of, but you didn't actually know what my grades were, so you thought I had way better grades than I did, I think.
Probably.
Like I had good grades, but you were trying to like compete with me on a different level.
Yeah, I was also.
I'm pretty sure you got better grades than me
I
throughout
was
high
trying to
school.
compete with Romney to an extent, even though he stopped
Yeah.
really trying to get good marks. And what's really annoying is this jerk can like do some basic writing from his perspective and like get a B plus, and
He's a great writer.
or like understand the math almost instantly, and then I have to figure it out.
I suck at writing, so yeah, kind of jealous of his writing. But, well, not really. It's good for him.
Yeah, no. So there's a lot of factors that played into it, and when you want to escape yourself, I think a great way is to try to do a complete identity change. And so, like, gender neutral is not.
We need
gonna
to
be
like bring back
female.
goths, right? Like just dye your hair black, listen to some edgy music, and when you're 20, you can let your hair grow and cut it off. And
Yeah, but there's also the attraction of the power of being gender neutral.
but a goth, like you got to be mopey and
Yeah,
mysterious.
but you don't get to tell people to call you something different.
Do you think that it was a Matt? You never did that, so
Yeah, but it was a. So my.
were you kind of like that image of the guy at the party? They don't know I'm gender neutral.
Kind of, yeah. It was kind of that thought there. There's that want to inflict my will upon the world, but at the same time, when I was younger, I was extremely agreeable.
And you wanted a way to disagree?
It's not even that. It's I was so agreeable that my megalomania from being gender neutral and forcing people to call me
Right.
gender neutral
Was superseded
by my agreeable, considerate. I don't want to cause problems.
So you're like an SJW that doesn't want to cause a fuss.
Yes, basically. And honestly, then
Black lives matter. Hey, sorry.
yeah, kind of that. I didn't want to cause a fuss.
That's kind of how they started. People just felt sorry for them and let them keep doing it.
Yeah. And that, well, also like another thing at that time is I've talked about this before, but because I was suffering from hallucinations, visual and not auditory. I actually have never had auditory when it's bad. Auditory just happens randomly. I think a lot of people get random auditory hallucinations. Because I was suffering from visual hallucinations.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a change to personality. People will notice that. And it's not so much of, ooh, this will make me popular if I have a mental thing. It's, this will make me noticed.
This will make them care. This will show them.
Well, not even this will show them. It's just people will care about this as something else that's interesting.
I've told you about my extreme pain when I was little.
No. But...
Nobody cared then either.
Just so I can finish this. That one story about not the flying Scotsman, the mathematician, really did save me.
Jonathan Nash, yeah.
Yeah, like the story about Jonathan Nash, I think, really saved me.
Why's that? Oh, because he was able to just
He's
overcome.
a badass.
Yeah.
And it's way cooler being a badass than it is to be a miserable wreck. It's way cooler to be strong than it is to be weak. And even, like right now I'm telling the story because we're talking about it, but it's not like, hey, I overcame schizophrenia. It's like, there's not that, like, because as part of, I don't know, the want for that's like, oh, I'm doing this all for attention.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really for attention. It's like all the, stand in the corner, they don't know. It's very much that kind of self-aggrandizement, self-image.
Dark power hidden in your hand.
Yeah, no, it's very much Chunibi.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was very much Chunibi to extent of, but because we didn't have the cool, oh, I have the Dark Lord sort of perspective thing, it was embracing mental illness. However, is embarrassing to express, and I had self-consciousness, and I didn't want to annoy people or send my problems to other people, that I didn't inflict my mental illness Chunibi onto them as much as I could have, that people then didn't go, oh, this person has this, and so there wasn't any of that positive feedback loop. And then I had an alternative story about being strong rather than weak, and then for past, like, basically, because you told me that I should check out Sargon and Dr. Ranmarkan, but definitely Sargon, even when he was more of a shitlord, he was still very much on self-improvement, be a man, be stronger, daddist sort of idea, and he's only solidified that more in that thought process. And
So this might be hard to answer. Like, I don't know if you'd have to think about it, but do you think you're too harsh on yourself about that?
What do you mean by too harsh on myself?
Could the gender neutral thing not be as bad as that? Could it be real or just a... could there have been some legitimacy to the thought? How about?
No.
Because they call it for girls, they call it pick me girls. I don't know if you've heard of this, where they put down other girls to appear cool to guys.
Mm.
And it's very tempting, like, hey, I'm a Jew, you can make Holocaust jokes with me, I'm cool. Like, it's a very common thing to do, right? So do you think it's possible that to become part of the anti-SJW crowd, you're going too harsh against
No.
gender neutrality?
No, I don't. I think that for some people, general neutrality is what works for them. I think there are people, because I know people who are extremely aromantic.
Yeah.
And there are some people who want to be as neutral slate as possible. And a way for them to see the neutral slate is general neutrality works for them.
Yeah.
But for me, it was definitely abnegation to a certain extent. And part of the reason why I know this is if you're a blank canvas, so to say, then it's very easy to pretend to be one or the other. And I don't know, maybe I look manly or something. I don't know, I got long hair right now. But I'm not the manliest man who ever did man, mentally. Like, I have, like, in my YouTube channel, my avatar is a red-haired dryad.
Yeah.
And quite often I use a physical representation of that to a certain extent.
Yeah. Play with gender or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
to that extent. And so saying being general neutral makes it, I don't know, more acceptable to do that.
Right.
However, it's almost the funny thing of that one YouTuber who cross-dresses all the time.
Finster?
Yeah, Finster is the most manly man because women can't cross-dress as women.
Right. Yeah.
And also there's the other joke, this is actually quite common in anime. They have this sort of weird culture of like a backlash and back and forth, where they have these, like as a trope in anime or manga, they have these incredibly manly, like ridiculous jaw covered in, like the...
Stubble?
Yeah, stubble. Like this guy looks like the manliest man. And one, he's flamboyantly gay. And two, he like cross-dresses to a certain extent. And people are like, what on earth are you doing? It's the most manly thing a man can do is to open his heart to others and express himself truly. And it's like, those are manly men. Even though they're wearing skirts.
I think...
But I'm not of that thought as manly dressed like a woman. But it's more of, yeah... I don't think I was being too harsh. It was abnegation to a certain extent and trying to find some sort of escapism.
The playing with gender thing is probably an aspect of our culture to some extent.
Yeah.
You have... Whenever you make a line, people want to cross it, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I really liked... One of my favorite characters of all time is Samus. And Samus has this misconception as this giant thing of armor. And then there's Samus inside it. And I had a yellow Power Ranger toy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember doing this, but we had like tons of superhero armor and gear because like you'd have the superhero and then you like put all their armor. And I'd collect every single piece of armor and like Batman's cape, Flash's chest piece that he has, like every single piece of superhero armor. And my goal was to cover up the yellow Power Ranger, who's a girl, as much as possible. So it looked like this like ridiculously over-geared, awesome dude. And in the little games I play quietly, that was the misconception, is this like absolute like destroying knight in power armor, like basically a space marine.
Yeah.
And there's the yellow Power Ranger inside. And I was doing that when I was like 5.
Yeah, I think ideas can be latched onto and become very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think we do tend to grow out of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I used to really like mermaids. I haven't for like 15 years, but I used to really like mermaids. I didn't have any mermaid toys. I just thought they were cool.
Yeah.
And so I'd pretend that like other toys were, mostly when I was really young, actually. It's probably more like 20 years since I've done that. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's
a sickness.
No.
To be patched.
No.
I don't, it can be, I think it can become a sickness.
Yes, no, it can become a sickness. And it depends on where you approach and what you do and what's your thoughts on it are.
If you're playing with dolls and you're 46 years old and you're playing with little dolls and painting them up and making them fight each other, there's something wrong.
Excuse me, those are minifigures, and I roll d6s to determine how the fight's going. There's very complicated rules.
Oh, well, that's all right then. If you're rolling dice, that's fine. That's why when I play with my Barbies, I roll dice. I got a +6 to putting on this skirt. Yeah. Now I'm gonna roll for combing my hair.
You say that, however, you like dress me up.
Oh, I love Nikki. Yeah. Yeah, but that's because that game's cool. Okay. Look. You can. There's playing with dolls, right? And those people are just sissies. But then there's
paper dolls.
But then there's Love Nikki, and that is a game for men. Because it is a game of warfare. Do you know the story of Love Nikki? It's during a post-apocalypse where there was a war so extreme, all weaponry was banned, and the only way to fight is through fashion contests.
So, Comic Books Matter, your boy Zach, talked about... I didn't watch the full video, but know his pre-rambles? How sometimes there's more information going on in his pre-ramble than the actual subject of the video. So he's talking about D&D in comics. And he's saying, back in my school, when we all started playing D&D, all the guys, it wasn't the parents or the church that frowned on us. These packs of roving girls went about the schools and berated any group of guys that are playing D&D and bullied them mercilessly to the point where they stopped playing D&D. But with comics... He's saying, I buy a new comic and I'd be reading, and this giant guy would walk up to me. It's like, oh no, he's going to bully me for it. And then you look at the comic and go, oh, my cousin has a bunch of comics. I really like that one character there. That's pretty cool. Can I sit by you and read the comic with you for a bit? And you say, the guys never cared about the comics and that stuff, but the girls were so mean about it. If you, had this one nerdy thing.
Well, that's because they're the drivers of society.
And so
they're the reason we don't get stuck on stupid stuff for too long.
So he said, and so when D&D... he's basically saying that the actual message, I think he's basically saying girls don't actually like comics.
Well, girls don't like new things.
Yeah, he's saying girls don't like comics is the whole point. He's getting to there because they're playing D&D now. They're starting comics. But he's saying, but that's because it's the thing that's done. Men held on to it long enough that I like it. That now it's a popular thing that's done, so they like it.
They're not doing it because it's popular. They're not doing it because it's unpopular.
Yeah.
Because girls don't like taking that risk of exploration, because they are the reproducers and they don't want to waste their energy on stuff that doesn't keep humans going. They are the choosers, right? Yeah. They're going to choose the person doing the tried and true thing. Mm-hmm. And so if you're an athlete, that's tried and true throughout thousands of years, millions even. So it's like, yeah, you're cool. D&D, brand new in the 80s. Mm-hmm. You're not cool until it's been tested, but it's like, hey, this is a good idea. Like
Matt Mercer has good hair. So
some of the testers, the guys that were testing out shooting up in an alleyway, they ended up not being super cool, and so the girls, they don't go for those guys, but they might go for the D&D guys now because that was tested and that seemed to be okay. But that's just basic reproduction, right? You've got
the comic book nerds are still sort of, you're not certain.
Yeah, you're like, is this actually?
Now the manga readers can be acceptable to extent, but the comic book nerds,
it's like. I'm not anti things, but Japanese art is just terrible. Most of it. No, that's not. I mean, yeah, it is. But they make good video. They make some good video. Nintendo makes there's one good Nintendo.
No, there are certain styles of manga I cannot read because I dislike the art style so much.
There is a good anime and there is good video game. Japan has a lot going for it. Some of their art is nice.
A lot of people quite like it.
And I'm sure there's a good manga out there as well. There might even be two. I don't know. I haven't read enough manga to dislike it, to be fair.
Also, remember what we said earlier, art is subjective.
Yeah. Well, no.
But manga is subjectively bad.
No, I very carefully didn't say that. I said that beauty is in the eye of beholder, right?
Yes, and the story is in the eye of beholder.
No.
No, there's just some bad
No,
stories. They just haven't read a good book yet.
You think you have beauty in your eyes, but you're wrong.
Everyone should read... Malice and Book of the Fallen should be state mandated for everyone to read, and they have to read the whole series, and once they're done, they're allowed to then pursue other media, but they have to first pass a test to prove they understood it, and if they don't, they have to reread the whole series again.
No, if they understood it, something's wrong with them. No, Harry Potter is the best series out there.
Oh my goodness. It's weird. I was actually telling someone about you and your Harry Potter reading.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who get absolutely obsessed with Harry Potter. Like, they want the fake glasses. I mean, you have glasses, but they have their house.
I don't like glasses.
They have their house. They have the scarf. They get a wand. They want to go Universal Pictures or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're super obsessed. All they can talk about is Harry Potter. Like, absolute Harry Potter nerds. They do not compare in the slightest to you.
But I don't have the Deadly Hallows tattoo or anything.
Well, I think those people are also partly obsessed with the movies as well as the book, whereas I think you mostly care about the book.
I don't like the movies that much.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I've seen all of them.
You did.
Not sure.
I've seen all of them. I only saw them in theater.
Like number 2, I didn't watch half of because I was too scared.
Yeah.
So I closed my eyes. And then...
Goblet of Fire. You saw that.
I don't remember. And then number...
You know why I remember?
Number 7, the theater didn't bring sound,
Yeah.
so...
Do you know why I know that we saw Goblet of Fire? It's because you went to the movie theater with our mum. And I went as well. And the very end had Voldemort in it. And his face was so terrifying that I had nightmares for 2 weeks after watching the Goblet of Fire. And I very distinctly remember having nightmares about Voldemort for 2 weeks. So I know you've seen it in the theater.
Okay, so going back to the original point, do you think my mermaid fetish and your dressing up power armor perversion are from Where Did I Come From?
No, and I don't think they're fetishes or perversion.
Well, fetish is not misuse, but it can just be an obsession, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was even... No, I think I was probably obsessed with mermaids for a little while. I wanted to be a biologist so I could genetically engineer mermaids.
Good God, you sound like my friend. I have a friend who was going to biosciences, and his joke is to make cat girls.
No, I the thing was, right?
Well,
I didn't know you couldn't.
No, the thing is, we're not certain if he's being serious or not. Actually, it's not even jokingly. It was that might be something he would try to do.
I was really into the idea of crossbreeding. I was like, I'm gonna make a griffin and a mermaid and centaur. And you know what's weird is I really loved the idea of crossbreeding for years. Even when I was playing RimWorld, I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then that genetic mod came out.
Yeah.
And I couldn't run it because it had all these stuff that didn't work in my other mods. And then the remake of it came out recently, and it works flawlessly. And I got it, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't care in the slightest. This is boring.
Yes.
Sometimes you just lose complete interest in stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny. But I was just like, who cares about crossbreeding? It's so boring.
So you're not like Brock anymore?
No. Well, no, I still like the idea of racial purity. I like the idea.
So you're not like Brock, you're more like his German compatriot.
No, I like the idea of breeding. Is that what you would call it?
Like making this Uber dog?
Yeah, I like the idea of making the best Pokemon or the pinnacle, Paragon manufacturer.
Yeah.
But
combining things so that the best qualities are at the top.
Yeah, but I'm not give a dog wings. It's why not just have an eagle?
Yeah.
It already has wings.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why I liked it. It's not that I don't know why I lost interest. It's I don't know why I liked it in the first place.
No, so with the statement though on the gender play, and I've watched a lot of Benjamin Voice, and so I actually have done a lot of self-reflection on it, and it is not a perversion or a fetish for me.
I'm in control.
No, it's not that I'm in control. It's that there's nothing sexual to it. The thought, attractive women are attractive men are attractive, so they are attractive while they look like that. So there's the factor that they're attractive, but it's not the thing itself that is attractive, which is, for a lot of people, is the thing itself that is attractive, but it's more of okay, yeah, it's this and attractive at the same time. But it's more of my interest of the concept.
Yeah, well, no, I think like I said, well, there used to be a big deal made in, was it the 1700s? Women wearing pants.
Yeah.
And it was like a sort of empowering move to show like, look how, and there's always been this
How indecent. You can see their leg muscles through those pants.
There's always been an experimentation. And normally it's women copying men's fashion. Always it's women copying. Men never copy women's fashion.
I mean, guys like tomboys.
Yeah, but like when has a man... So Harry Styles has done that. He's like wears dresses and stuff. Now the problem is...
Men want to beat the ever-living hell out of him.
Well, no, the problem... So there was a guy like in 2010, this African dude. He wore dresses. And it was like this big thing. It was like, oh, this guy's wearing dresses. He wore really nice dresses. Like they look good. Like he got like these like colors that complemented him.
Yeah.
Cuts that fit his body.
Yeah.
Like he actually looked good. Like
he was wearing dresses for a man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is
if men are to wear dresses, they should be like robes.
Robes, yeah.
Look really good.
Robes are men dresses.
Yeah, no, but there's I can't remember. I think
or just like Chinese. What are they called? The Chinese suits.
Yeah, but in
I love those things.
In Wakanda, the first Wakanda movie, Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys who's in the council, he's wearing a robe that's these like big straps on his shoulders. Yeah. It's basically like a vest robe, so it shows off like the muscle of his shoulder, and that's open to show a very long V-neck. And so you could look at that and say, oh, that's kind of a feminine outfit he's wearing. However, it's very square forms to it. It's got a lot more wider angles to it, and it's very manly on him, and it looks good. Like, it's a very manly outfit, even though if you look at it another way, he's wearing a dress.
Well, like those, those Chinese like suits. Yeah. I love those things. That's what I imagine Lord Glove wearing. Like, I just love this.
Yeah, well, even so, in Japan.
I wonder if I think I could wear one of those.
Maybe.
Am I allowed?
In Japan, I own the Japanese equivalent. So we went to a festival and everyone's fitted. So the girls were given kimonos, and I can't remember the male version of it.
I don't mean like those long flowy robes. Okay. I mean like they're like this tight like those cylinder things.
Yeah.
With like tassels like
yeah.
Yeah.
So the girls were given kimonos.
Yeah.
And the guys were given the male version. I can't remember what they're called. They're very
Kagruntos.
No. They're actually very similar, but the subtle differences in them make them quite different. So I know you're big into fashion with your thing. So a kimono tapers in towards the armpit.
Yeah.
So it gets a triangular taper, whereas the men's stays open all the way to the armpit. So that's actually one of the biggest differences.
Right.
And then the legs are slightly tighter on the kimono, so they have to take shorter steps, whereas the men's are left slightly wider so they can take a stride, so you can move quickly, so you can basically defend yourself. And then the colors and the layering of the belts after that are the only differences. But it's basically, there's more freedom of movement of the arms, and the men's arms are designed to have pockets inside them so you can carry stuff, where the women's, they sort of flop, so if you try to store stuff in them, they'll fall out. And then it's just the leg movement, and those are like the biggest differences.
It's funny, like I said at one point, I was on the podcast, I was the reincarnation of Louis XIV. I think I like to think I like fashion, I'm into fashion, but I don't think I'm actually like that knowledgeable about it.
Did I just say something incredibly boring to you?
No, I'm just, I need to come clean. I don't think I'm actually...
The sun god?
Yeah, I don't... I think I'm probably more like Diogenes. Like if I was a reincarnation of a famous historical figure, like a crazed homeless guy that lives in a bathtub
and throws stuff at people and swears at them while he's in the middle of the road.
Probably more like Diogenes. Although he had some he did some stuff I don't think I could do. Like he would walk into theaters backwards and people are like, you're going the wrong way. He's like, how do you know what the right way is?
Put on some pants, Diogenes. Pants are for sissies.
Put on pants, that's what the man wants. There's actually a great story of Diogenes where his friend, who's a philosopher as well, this very rich guy, worked for the king, came to him and he said, if you
wear pants, we'll give you some money, you can live a decent life.
He said, learn to praise the king and you won't have to eat lentils. And Diogenes said to him, learn to eat lentils and you won't have to praise the king. Was
Diogenes the Stoic?
I don't remember. Picurus was a Stoic. Diogenes lived in a
Just
bathtub.
raving lunatic. They live in the bathtub, or he just take baths in the center of the street?
No, he lived in the bathtub. He was homeless.
Okay.
Yeah. And at one point, some kids drilled a hole in his bathtub. And so the city did a fundraiser to get him a new bathtub.
Was he a tourist attraction?
Yep.
Imagine being such a prominent, crazy homeless guy. You are...
Like, remembered for thousands of years.
Yes, not really
Well, like, think about how differently we treat homeless people now.
Yeah.
Like, he was... the whole town got together to raise money for his new bathtub.
He was homeless because he very much chose to be.
Yeah, but still, they loved him. They're
Yes.
like, there's our little crazy mascot.
Yes.
I don't think I'm actually as, like... I don't have enough courage to be like he was. I don't.
Chismo.
Yeah, I don't.
Is that the word chism? I'm saying it slightly wrong, but
I don't know. Like he's just there's a certain amount of like gall you need to have to pull that off, and I don't think I'd have that. I don't know who I'd be historically. Probably someone that isn't famous, because the famous people are willing to do stuff.
Speaking of the ancient philosophers, I saw something incredibly stupid where someone was asking, why do we revere? Like, why were the old philosophers revered so much, like, compared to nowadays? Like, what did they actually do? And then they're like, someone post, imagine Socrates just sitting there drinking his wine and, like, saying something, and then a crowd applauding. And I knew from the way they described the scene, they're talking about his suicide picture, because that's the painting they described. And it's like, I was kind of thinking, how is someone so stupid?
Oh,
But you don't know everything, so.
There's this. I do this all the time, right? You learn something, and the instant you learn it,
everyone else is an idiot for not knowing it.
Yes,
Yes.
you get so mad at them. You're like, how do you not know about this?
Yeah.
It's so obvious. It's like, well, no, and I mean Socrates. I don't know if he was the head of a school. He founded the academics, I think it was.
Yeah, no, that's what the philosophers in Athens did. Is they taught they taught children.
I don't think Diogenes did, but
no,
but you know.
Yeah, but they taught people stuff. They were scientists, mathematicians. It's just they didn't do experiments. They only theorized on it.
In fact, Diogenes might have been a cynic, but I'm not, because he lived like a cynic. I don't know if he was a cynic. But he definitely lived like one.
Lived like a dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next time someone tells you they're a cynic, just bark at them.
Anyways, the culture restrictions, I think, tend to have people play with the boundaries.
Yes. And
you get... I mean, look, I dressed as Kirby for Halloween one time. I mean, that's pretty feminine. Also as Princess Peach, but Kirby. And...
my grandmother called my hair girly.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Don't like those ones. But
it's not the worst thing a grandmother has said about me.
But do you think that need to follow that, to destroy the cultural norms, the autogynephilic perversion comes from, where did I come from?
No, I don't think so.
I think it broke deep inside. No.
Also, autogynephilia usually happens in older people.
Yeah, it's kind of... You know what the worst thing is, though? Like, you see these pictures...
And narcissists, to a certain extent.
You see
it's not narcissists, just they're attracted to themselves, which is really weird.
You see these old people, these autogynephile old peoples, and I don't know, man, like, you're attracted to that?
Well, here's the other thing. This was one of the interesting things conceptually about it. So,
like,
a lot of...
I can get behind the idea, right? But you gotta look good.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So, a very common thought on the cross-dressing on autogynephilia on trans people is they're always wearing dresses and they're always wearing makeup.
Yeah.
Now, to a certain extent...
That's not trans.
Yeah, but so to a certain extent of wearing makeup helps cover up how much of a man you look like. However, there's different ways to apply it. Like, if you look at how Finster applies his makeup, he's not applying it to exaggerate femininity.
Yeah.
He's applying it to make his masculine and naturally feminine features look more feminine, but he doesn't go overboard. And something that I know is people who have very broad shoulders shouldn't wear sundresses if they want to cross-dress.
Yeah. Well, yeah, duh.
Yeah, but But people do that, the cross-dressers to the extent. And like
Oh,
there's...
it does a bit harsh. But yeah, you want to
And-
accentuate and hide what is...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so... And also, like, wear jeans.
Well, not for... If you're trans, wear jeans, yeah.
Yeah.
If the goal... Like drag artists, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to be ridiculously feminine.
Yes.
Like, a woman can be a drag queen.
Yes.
Because they are not women. They are clowns.
Yes.
They are freakish clowns. And they know that.
Mhm.
It's a performance.
Yes.
If you want...
Well, it's something actually, a lot of drag queens are mostly men. Most of them are gay.
I wonder why that is. That's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
But maybe because they're already willing to break some boundaries.
Yeah.
I wonder what the connection between left-handedness and gays is.
Maybe that's why they look so clownish, is because they don't know a thing about women.
No, it's on purpose.
Yeah, but I know, but they're gay.
If you look...
That's something actually that I found really funny of... do you know the paradox about the top fashion designers?
They're men? Yeah.
No, but they're gay men. So they don't even know what looks good on a woman.
Ah, I see.
Because they're not attracted to them.
Right. So, well, I think you can recognize a sort of aesthetic beauty.
Yeah, no, they're that's the opposite thing, but it's just like the sort of paradox that people point out. You're not even attracted to a woman. How would you know it'll look good on her?
Like, it's men and women both prefer to look at women.
Yes.
Because you can appreciate aesthetics. There's a reason why, like, every sculpture is of a woman.
Well, what about David?
Well, Michelangelo, we got to have a talk about it. No,
The statue of David is a...
he's done a lot of statues, though.
Yeah. Well, the other...
But also, the David is, like, that's one good-looking statue.
Well, the thing about Michelangelo's art is his women look like men.
I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that you could only get male models.
Yeah.
So you just do what you could with what you had.
Yeah.
Because it was seen improper to get a female model.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, strip naked, and I'll pretend you're a woman. Wait, what did I sign up for? It's art.
There's this one apparently ridiculous piece of art called Lily Rose at Dusk. And the guy took something like 6 years or 3 years to paint it. And it's because he only ever worked for 5 minutes every single day in the evening. Because he wanted to be painting at dusk with the lighting of dusk. And apparently his models sort of start going insane after a while because they like show up every single day to paint with him. There's another guy, he is a sergeant. And his painting sessions went so long that he'd hire musicians to play in the background so his models wouldn't just leave.
That Don guy, if someone walked in the frame while he was painting, would he paint them?
Damn it! You painting bomber!
It's like, no, I have to start over. 6 more years. But no, with drag, like men can look like women, like Vindsvept.
Yeah.
I've done it. Men can look like women, but
Oh, that beard.
debatable. There was that Eurovision guy who did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of people that think he's trans. He's a performer.
Hmm.
He's not trans.
Yeah.
He just dresses to confuse the heck out of people when he's on stage.
Yeah.
But you remember that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you wouldn't win a drag competition at all, even if you looked exactly like a woman, because that's not the point.
Yes.
The point is to have like crazy, like,
Horns, devil horns.
yeah, everything. You're supposed to look.
Glowing red eyes, hooves, claws, red skin, a pitchfork, and the fires.
I don't follow drag stuff, so maybe there's like a classy division, but
I was just going the it's satanic. And
right. Oh, I see.
That's what I was going for.
Well, they do look a bit garish, but
Yeah.
but
As someone who appreciates tasteful cross-dressing, I dislike drag quite a bit. As is a clownishness of it. Actually, no, that is true. I don't really like drag. As in drag shows.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an opinion really.
I do.
But do you think they're drag queens because they read Where Did I Come From when they were kids? Or they didn't read it?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering what the damage is. I
There's
need
probably
to.
a part.
Do I need to get checked, Connor? I feel like I hear all these talks about childish innocence, and I don't I don't remember it, and I don't know if it's because I just don't understand what they're talking about, or if it's because I read this book. It's got to be one or the other.
I think a book could cause a certain amount of damage, but I don't know if it cause everything.
Yeah. And I also read, what was it called? Rhapsody when I was 9, which I think that was fine. But yeah, I read Game of Thrones when I was 11 as well. It's kind of
Yeah, I think reading Game of Thrones when you're 11 would have a bigger impact.
I don't know if it would than reading this book when you're 4 or something.
Maybe.
Like kids can handle death and sex when they're like 9, can sort of. Not. I mean, I think I did. Well, maybe I didn't. Maybe that's yeah, I don't know. And the thing is, you can get over this stuff, right? It doesn't. You don't focusing on the past. I've said it to you before, but not on the podcast. But look to the future, you'll be anxious. Look to the past, you'll be depressed. In the present, you are calm.